record. It's 3:01, and I'll call the meeting to order. The meeting is duly constituted, a quorum is present, and the first order of business is approval of the agenda of the Council Strategy meeting of the Village of Lions Bay to be held on Tuesday, January 19th, 2016 at 3 p.m. Can I have a motion to approve and a second? Discussion? I don't know how we're going to do this, Peter, but I see a need to move the 7B item, the mayor, ahead of the discussion of the water, sewer and solid waste draft budget and the supplementary budget requests, because some of those requests impinge on the I can refer to it forward, but it may be worthwhile to have reviewed it before. Some of them anyway.
Yeah, I think it could have gone either way. I think the idea was with the sewer, water, solid waste, we'll be talking just about rates almost independent of some of the things we're going to include in the budget, and then save the detail of the supplemental and your report.
Well, it's not really detail, it's more high strategy, but I'm fine with whichever order. And then items 2 through 8, as far as I know, they're not on the agenda. I didn't receive the word whether recommendations were needed or not.
So 2 through 8.
On the second page of the agenda.
Oh, B 2 through 8.
Yeah.
Okay. So these are items to be discussed, and if there are resolutions that arise out of them, then we'll make note of them.
But I haven't prepared any material. I haven't written any recommendations why I would call for such a thing. I mean, I can touch on them very briefly what they are, but I don't want to blow my gaff prematurely.
My thinking on it was that we're in effectively a committee of the whole, or council strategy committee meeting.
We use the term interchangeably.
These are items that are we can have a free ranging discussion about.
Okay.
And I think that to do so with by presuming what the recommendation would be coming out of that would be to put the cart before the horse. I think it's better to just let's have the idea here was to have points to discuss. We can discuss them freely, and then if there's something that comes out of them, we can decide, or you can decide what that recommendation or resolution ought to be.
Okay, that sounds fine. Everybody good with that? Okay, so we'll leave the agenda as it is, as far as I'm concerned. Anybody else? Ron?
Yes. 8, new business. We could put financial calendar on that.
Yeah. Okay, so that is 8A, correct? Yeah. I'm good with that. Anything else?
Sorry. Under 7I, I just had an extra report regarding
7I. There is no 7I.
Oh, not 7. 7AI.
7A1?
Reports? Yeah, A1.
7A1's a staff report.
I just,
Did you like
with
this
regards to
C?
the key performance indicator,
You want to,
I just had an extra,
but you're not going to add that to the agenda. We're just going to discuss that under 7A1,
I can,
because that's a staff report. If you have some input to that, that's good.
yeah, I do.
Okay, so then
Do I,
just do it under 7A1.
when we come to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Correct? Peter?
I'll
It is a staff report,
Yep.
not a council report.
Right.
So maybe we want to do a separate council report, in which case we would do it under 7C1.
But it just relates to the KPI.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I also have this order situation.
I would suggest that
Okay.
that we why don't we say 7C1C? We'll add a C, and so this will be Councillor Watterson's materials regarding KPIs.
Yes.
But
We will move that item forward to discuss it at the same time as the staff report.
Fine. Yeah, if that works for everybody.
That makes sense.
Okay, and that'll be just your discretion to move.
Yeah, that's fine.
to
This is a council strategy meeting. This is not a formal business meeting. So, okay. So
I did have just one
Yeah,
other
sorry
thing,
about that.
and my apologies because it was covered off in one of your emails. You had referenced the Board of Variance bylaw, and reviewing its status. And I had that kind of as a low priority item, but I've had occasion to look at it for a particular purpose, and I think it needs to climb up my priority list, so I'd like to just have a brief discussion about that with you when we get to that. Yeah.
The horse, the board that they used to have on the tote, where you move the horses up and down the water, and then everything goes tick, 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 and that one. We need one of those. It's going to be there.
Ooh.
Okay, so where do you want that, under D?
Well, I just thought it could be new business, or it could
But
be.
it's actually already under action item report. Page 7.
Of the council strategy?
Yeah, if you go to page 7. Number
Okay.
2.
Sure, we can just
You want to just do it under
touch on
that?
it there.
I mean, this is a very old action item, as you see,
Mhm.
but is that adequate for your purposes?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, good, so we won't touch on that, but it'll come out of the action items. Last chance. Do I call a question on this one, even though it's a council strategy meeting? I think so. Call the question, all in favour? Opposed? Seeing none, that carries. So we will now go to public participation. Seeing none, we'll move on, thank you, to adoption of the minutes of the meeting of December 15th. Starting on page 3 of your package. Anybody? Move adoption? Second? All in favour? Opposed? Carried. And business arising from the minutes. There were no action items in the body. The only action items, therefore, were starting on page 7. The first one came from September 15th. Peter, this is all new to you, I know. Council expense remuneration policy to do with travel. Pam?
Yeah, this is actually, we'd said that it would be a travel reimbursement policy in general, an expense policy, and that would still come. There'd probably be a couple of months before we see that. It's just updating our travel.
Well, I
It's
think
not
one of the first
specific to
things was
council.
to bring the mileage remuneration rate up to the modern era. I don't believe it's been updated in 15 years. I don't know how many years. But it's still way, way under the CRA rate. I think that was one issue.
53 cents? I don't think so.
Okay, well, I'm asking for it now. I mean, we need an updated expense policy. So Peter, the backstory on this was to do with alcohol reimbursement for official entertainment purposes, rates to do with air travel, hotel, car, all that kind of stuff. Template was provided, I believe, either on September 15th or before, and it's getting time now where we actually have a policy that we believe in.
Sorry, you mentioned alcohol reimbursement. What's that? That's
Actually, it's
not
general
indicated
meals
here.
and meals in particular too.
Yeah, business meals at which alcohol is drunk.
It was
There
the
was-
entire travel reimbursement expense policy that we were looking at.
That's what occasioned the discussion.
Right.
The
But it was
policy
meals
has.
in itself too. I mean, I think we're footing the bill if we're taking the minister out now.
Well, it sounds like
Something
something that we need to review and look at what we've got and where we're going with it, and come back to council with a draft policy covering off these items that we can discuss and get your feedback on.
Yeah, sure. This to be actioned in the new year. That's a new arrival. That was not the case at the time, but there is no deadline on this, and we will not put a deadline on now. But it's, we're flying under an old policy, not blind, because there is something of a policy, not well understood by me certainly. Certainly, I was claiming alcohol expense in all innocence. Then I realised that was probably not cool, but I'd like a policy.
Okay.
Same date for the other action item, which is the Board of Variance recommendations, and you had
Right.
something for us.
So, in looking at what we have for the Board of Variance, staff was unable to find the actual resolutions appointing what are apparently our current Board of Variance members. The best we could do was we came up with a letter from 2003 by the then Mayor Douglas Miller, which was a letter to Peter Wigglesworth appointing him as a member of the board, and referring to the current members, Rich Moskowski and Bill Kimmett. I understand that Mr. Moskowski is still on the board, to the best of everyone's knowledge. Mr. Kimmett apparently was replaced by Mr. Mackey,
Yep.
unless there was somebody else in between. But we can find no resolutions for either. The other thing is that the actual bylaw refers to appointments by the province. It's
Under
by
the old LGA, yeah, which was how it was
the old
done.
municipal act,
The
yeah.
Municipal Act, yeah.
And I don't think that the bylaw reflects what's currently in the Local Government Act, which has itself just received a major overhaul.
Yeah.
So my concern is to see that we have a bylaw and procedures for a board of variance and appointments that are clearly valid and that we're on the right page going forward, because
Well, that's why this is here,
yeah.
because I knew that.
So yeah, I just want to let you know that it's come to my attention, and I want to move it up the priority list. So I'll come back to you with something soon.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, just to remind council, Board of Variance is a slightly strange animal. It is now a body of council, but it operates under fairly stringent terms set up by the community charter, including a 3-year term for members. That's not to say they couldn't be renewed, and so on and so on and so forth.
I wouldn't characterize it as a body of council. It's a body which is appointed by council.
That's what I mean by that.
But it's intended to be an independent statutory body.
Yeah.
So its decisions are not.
It's not a committee.
Okay.
Okay, good. So those carry over for another 2 weeks or more, and we will return to the agenda for item number 6, unfinished business. There is none on the docket, so we'll move on to item 7, A1, staff KPI recommendation, page 9.
Yes, I just wanted to bring forward the KPIs again. I've been receiving a lot of emails about various KPIs. Unfortunately, just with the staffing situation, I haven't had a chance to complete the work. But when I started looking at sort of all the different emails I was getting, I thought maybe a better approach might be just to look at what other small municipalities do some benchmarking, and then come forward with a recommendation of what we felt would be suitable KPIs for the Village of Lions Bay, and start reporting on those.
Okay. The original KPIs, as we all know, were set in June and resolved by council to be delivered in 2015. They were performance-based things to do with web page hits, front counter visits, water consumption. That one is actually now being published on the front page of the website, updated only weekly, but still better than having nothing at all. And a few more. I think there were about 3 more, 7 altogether. They were resolved by council to be delivered. They were not. So I'm fine. I'm happy with any KPI whatsoever. We have one. We have the water one. That's good. KPIs are not necessarily financial, as we know. And in fact, the ones that were requested, none of them were financial. Discussion?
You're looking for this as ongoing data, Carl? I mean, with the view to rolling it up to the annual report?
Some of it would definitely go into the annual report. For example, we are getting KPIs in a very undigested, unpresentable form, like fire department calls, for example. That's a KPI. The police report. It would be very nice to see that in a tabular way, tracked by month, with potentially even graphs to see, are we having more or less or the same? They're performance indicators. It's not anything other than that, or in some cases it brings accountability to bear. But
It's
measures.
It's a measure against the service that's being put out to the village residents. That's all it is, and it could be anything that's of value to the village.
Precisely.
And we want to count to say we are doing to the council. The village office is doing its job. It could be absolutely anything.
Well, I'd even go one level higher, and that's the council is doing its job.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's
I'm
right,
looking
of
for
course, yeah.
I'm looking for things that the village holds council accountable for. like the water keeping flowing and whatever. Fire service.
I guess from just having been here a very short time and sort of seeing the different emails with respect to this topic and having a few brief discussions with Pam, my thoughts on it are that I think we need to look at what are all the different ones that are capable of being measured, and then what's actually going to provide value. Because the last thing we want to do is expend a whole bunch of time and effort measuring things that aren't going to actually help us in terms of providing a better service or doing things more efficiently. So
Well, I think that's implied in the.
that's part of the.
It's part of the word key. Yeah, I don't want to measure the wind speed on a daily basis. This work has been done. The KPIs were set long time ago. None of them are capricious. None of them are arbitrary. The need to find the web page hits is to decide, are some pages of no use whatsoever? Do we need to put more effort into the website? Until we know these things, we don't know. I would hope that many of these are already being tracked, like, for example, front counter visits.
Well, that's, if I may.
Please go ahead. We're not that formal.
With
now.
respect to that particular one, that's a good example of what I'm talking about, because you could have 5 people that come in on a given day, and one of them is speaking with, say, Susan at the front desk, talking about a building matter, and she could be there for an hour helping that person.
Yeah.
And then 4 more people come in, and
We need to know that.
they all take 5 or 6 minutes. So the key is not to just count how many people came in, but we need to understand what it is they're doing, but at the same time, not creating gobs of work in doing so. We need to find what can we measure efficiently and what's going to be effective, what tells us the story. What would we change? Knowing that Susan spent an hour helping somebody with a building matter, and there were 4 other people that came in for dog permits and other things.
Okay, so I'll answer that question.
Okay.
We'll put the dog permits on the website, or put the building permits on the website, because now we know that it's taking too much of our time. It's a very gross example, yes, I understand it, and many a slip twixt the cup and the lip. I'm not suggesting, well, I am suggesting, I laid out 7 that I would have hoped we were tracking anyway. They've not been delivered, despite the council resolution. So I'm very happy to go with this recommendation. We'll have to rescind the other resolution, I presume, because it's been abrogated, right?
Well, based on those 7, we can report those for you, the ones that we can next meeting.
But it's not a one-time report.
No, I
it's
understand
an ongoing
that.
publishing.
No, and that's actually why I brought forward this report. To me, that was an email I got. It was a resolution. It was a few KPIs. But to me, it's a much broader topic, and I'm inundated with emails on these KPIs, and they're not coming from council. And that's what I'm asking for, is that council sit down in a committee of the whole and decide what I think they are very important. What ones you want to see. You've given me a piece of it, and
No, hang on a sec. Just hang on 1 second. That was resolved by council in June.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that.
So
it's
what
not
more do you
complete.
want than that?
But that's all the KPIs you want, and then that's fine. But
That's all we wanted for
Well,
starters,
that's
yes.
not what I'm getting from emails. I'm getting a lot of emails with other KPIs, so I'm
Okay,
suggesting...
what about the ones that were
that-
resolved?
Yes, I'm saying I'll get
6
those
months
to you.
ago.
Okay, fine. 6 months ago. I will get them for you for the next meeting.
And
But what I'm saying
just to
is-
remind you, the resolution states published, meaning on the website or on a
Yes.
poster or in
I
flashing
think
lights.
we've made it clear that I've missed that deadline. But what I'm saying is, for the other KPIs, I'm getting a lot of emails on KPIs. I'd like to sit at a committee of the whole and decide which ones you'd like to see, and then I'd be happy to do them. I just, there was one piece we got direction on, but to me that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of KPIs, because I actually think they are very important. I think they go in your annual report, and we do report on them monthly. But other than that one piece, that was the only direction we've had on them. Yes.
So, I'm not sure what is your recommendation, is that we sit together and come up with a list of KPIs?
Additional ones, yes.
Or are you, because this is staff to prepare?
Yes, I mean, I can
report to
bring some
council.
suggestions as well. If you're interested, I can find out, things seem to be meaningful for other small municipalities and bring them forward. And you bring forward your ideas, and then we determine which ones we'd like to see.
Because for me, I thought that having KPIs would be important in our budget decision making, because then how do we know if in 2015 we accomplished what we wanted to, and then if in the planning of 2016 do we need to put more funds behind something or less or whatever. So unless we have this information earlier rather than later, if we're only gonna get the information for the annual report, then
I see it's something we report on monthly, but I'm saying some of them could also go into an annual report
Yeah.
as it information
And
for
would you
the
think some of
public.
it is important for the budgeting process?
I think what's more important for the budget is just sort of your prior year's budget and your prior year's actual, in terms of how we spent our money and what council strategies are and what they want to spend their money on this year in terms of looking at the supplemental list that we have and giving council an opportunity to prioritize what they'd like to spend the money on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't think off the top of my head any KPIs that would be useful, but
Well, for example, I keep on going on about staffing, right? That would probably be useful,
that's not
right?
really a KPI. I mean,
It-
we've got
it
the
is-
labor model in terms of what staffing though.
Like the staff, okay, what might be useful is,
Maybe this is a discussion for
Yeah.
closed?
Mhm.
well, I'm not talking about specific staff or anything. I think in general, for example, if you're wondering how staffing, a KPI on staffing relates to budgeting, then ideally I would like to know if, in general, are the residents happy with, say, just specifically front of desk service, right? And if it's no, then we might have to put more money to maybe hiring more staff or less staff or whatever, something like that.
Yeah, there's, then you speak to some of that in one of your reports is on page 25 or 27. And I think there's some of that goes towards the discussion around communication strategy, surveying residents regarding certain things.
Or even public works, like, are we satisfied with the level, like, that the trees are mowed, or, I don't know, not trees, the lawn is mowed regularly enough? If not, then we may need to put more money behind it. So that's why I think KPIs are important as part of the budgeting process.
Yeah, some of these are more subjective than others. I would like to see us tracking parameters we should be measuring anyway. For example, asset utilization percentage. I would hope that when we take out our chipper, it's logged out and logged back in again, and we know how many hours it ran. I would like to know how badly we use our bucket truck. Why? Because if we're not using it, maybe we sell it and rent one when we need it. Or maybe we need two. I don't know. I would hope that these things are being tracked. Because if they're not, everybody's flying blind, not just council. And that would concern me greatly to learn that. So some of this is an accountability issue, some of it's financial, some of it's budgeting. But I would like to think that we could look at parameters that are recurring, changeable, and reportable. So I'm fine with this recommendation. I hope that the recommendations doesn't come back to find that there's no small municipalities that provide any KPIs. I'd like to see us as a bit of a groundbreaker in this respect then.
I have difficulty around the whole subject because I understand KPIs very well, but what I don't understand is what KPIs have been in existence in the past here. Like we've been 1 year and a bit in council, okay? So if we're flying blind because of no KPIs, fine. The thing is that what KPIs have been established in the past? What have we had in the way of recording records of what is needed, what's being done in the office already? And let's continue with that until such time as we know that it's not sufficient. And the only way we can do that is get feedback from the community and from the residents and from meetings like this and from the.
Well, I can answer the
council,
question in
things like
one
that.
respect, which is a truly vital KPI.
Yeah.
That was our water production.
Yeah.
And it was found through the efforts of one of the committees, the IC committee,
Mhm.
that we had, in fact, an analog for stream flow through the measurements that we've been taking.
Yep.
The measurements only started really being taken properly when our new public works manager came
Yeah,
on board.
that's fine.
But logs were being kept.
Yep.
Talk about a great KPI. If we didn't have that, in terms of water production and how it met demand, as everybody knows, we would have run out twice last summer. Or more, depending on who you believe. But
That's right, but the whole point is that let's not go searching for KPIs if we don't know we need them for certain things and for certain aspects, and not just to have a KPI to report on. We don't need to be inundating ourselves or our staff in the office worrying about counting this and counting that, when in fact we need certain things as KPIs. We need our water statistics, we need our probably our weather statistics and stuff like that for the intakes for the water and stuff like that. We need all that information that helps us do what we have to do as a community, as a village, to support the residents in this village. But beyond that, I don't know. Do we need a KPI on how many people ask for tree topping? Or, how many times we cut the grass? I don't think so. We do need some things to be accountable to. I think that's great. That's a good idea. However, how many municipalities? I believe a lot of municipalities do it. I don't know whether they actually count it a lot because they have trained staff that do a lot of that stuff as part of their job process. So, don't know. But I don't know. I look at what we've got to accomplish as a council here. I look at what in the next 3 years, what we've got to set and what we've got to do with our water systems and our infrastructure systems in the village. And I think we're chasing the bloody wrong tree here. It's not.
How do you know
the right-
that?
Well, I don't. But the thing is that, think about it. If we came in here and we said, we know we've got all these problems, let's design our KPIs around those problems and go from there. And do what we said we were going to do when we got elected in here and keep on moving in that direction. I believe that that's the best way to go. I don't want to go looking for something that we don't even know about.
So then
That's a
to
problem.
that extent, Jim, you'd be in favor of staff's recommendation?
Yeah.
Me too.
Me too.
Sorry, what does that mean, staff recommendation? We
Well-
come back with another set of KPIs?
There-
No, we're going to receive the report that's been
You
recommended
receive the
here.
report that's been recommended. It's fine.
Okay. And
Yeah.
when will this report be?
Thank you, Ron.
We're talking to
I know, you're right.
Okay, so that I wanted to know when that would be, and do we need to rescind the resolution of June 7th?
No, I think we'll do those once we have a resolution to do that, and I can report on those for the next meeting.
Before we move forward on that, I do have some more KPIs, and these are actually non-finance related.
Are
And I
these
don't
on
think,
are these on table?
yes, we had discussed this earlier. Yes, it's on table.
Does anybody have it?
No, I'm
That's not on the table.
Okay, on table is delivered at agenda approval time. I'll let it slide this time, but we can't be handing stuff around the table and expecting people to absorb it at the time because.
No, I don't need, okay, then I can put it on, I don't need you to absorb it now.
Oh, okay. It's
Yeah,
just for introduction. Okay,
It's just
so-
part
okay,
of,
fair
because
enough.
when I read, a bunch of reports, I thought, oh, I have some more.
No, this is a CFTW meeting, so we are allowed to discuss this stuff.
We don't have to be that formal, so
Yeah.
just run through them for us.
No, it's a whole long list, and it's just food for thought. Maybe each of us can go through it and think, oh, maybe we do need a KPI for this, or maybe, actually, most of them, maybe we don't. But it's just,
Great.
I just found it interesting.
Yeah, let's all understand the high-level purpose here. It's to understand where we're at and what the trends are. If the trends are up, down, sideways, and it's not. The whole thing about a performance indicator is that it's measurable.
So no, I'm not suggesting we go through each point, but
Yeah, just glancing at
Yeah.
this, these are all good things. I mean, one that I will be gathering and making available, hopefully will be allowed to publish on the website, is trends in real estate. So I'm putting a questionnaire together that the real estate people will fill out every time a transaction occurs. Who left, who's come in, not to do with value, to do with demographic, the number of people who left, the ages and sizes of people who came in, where do they go to school, what their intentions are. Why? Because if there's any more important an indicator on the future of Lions Bay, that's it. Why are you laughing?
pioneering again, Mr. Bird.
We have to know where Lions Bay is going. Talk about a performance indicator.
So, the realtors are preparing this gratis to us.
So far.
Good for you.
One thing I'm concerned about is whenever you want to start something like this is just thinking of what the focus is. Who is it for? Are the KPIs going to be for council's benefit so we can make decisions, or is it for general public information? Because you'd have possibly a whole different set of KPIs.
Given our limited resources, the answer is the first one, for council's benefit.
Yeah, well, it sort of struck me also with staff. You mentioned just as an example, the bucket truck. Well, how many times it goes in and out and how many times it's used isn't so much of an interest to council as it would be for the works manager. And after she comes up with the data and everything and says, hey, looks like we're not utilizing this, she would make a recommendation to us and back it up with her KPIs. But we don't need those KPIs, she would be doing that.
Fair enough.
I just use that as an example, so that we could focus on what would be, we get the greatest bang for the buck on ours.
Although I would also suggest that one of our fiscal fiduciary responsibilities is to ensure that our assets are being adequately utilized, that we've tied up a lot of money in a lot of stuff. Is it being used? Because if it's not, that's our problem. So we've got $1 million worth of mechanical assets out there.
I think that's a fair point too. I mean, to the examples we know we already have, I mean, we've got millions of dollars in fire department, what's the call out, what's the revenue and stuff like that, so that's obvious. Same for the police. Web hits are an obvious one. The number of people coming to the counter, it's a good indication of whether maybe we should have the office open on Wednesday or not. It's not just posing it as something or other. So I'd be interested in what staff has to say for the KPIs plus, you know, whatever food Helen's just put on the
So would
table.
I. I mean, talk about people who know how the municipality actually runs. So I'm looking forward to that. So we'll bring this forward to the meeting tonight, Peter. Is that how we're going to do it and resolve it there?
Or should we just use the existing resolution and you bring it forward?
Well, I think Pam's indicated that she'll come back with something with respect to those that are available currently from what was previously discussed. But that, you know, if you can indulge us with a bit of time to look into, I mean, there's a lot of things in here and there's probably some really good ideas.
Yeah.
But it's not something that I anticipate we're going to be in a position to come back with.
Maybe just those that
Right
might
away.
be relevant to the budgeting process, because I'm sure most of them are not.
But if we're talking about this budget,
Yeah.
then starting to measure something
Yeah,
now
or
isn't
just
going to have
having
any
enough,
impact
yeah.
on the budget that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, and bear in mind, you know,
forward.
so I'm just to pick two out here, just to really sort of narrow in what is a performance indicator. Park attendance is a performance indicator. Total miles of trails is not a performance indicator because it's not changeable. There's any number of things that can be measured. What we're trying to understand is what drives council decisions. We need data, and it's not only financial data. The financial is the main driver. So, of course, you'll be indulged with all the time you need. All I would suggest is, please let's not have the final package in 10 years' time. Let's get the first one, and then the second one, and the third one. We have the first one already. We have water. There was a bit of a cessation of data until I asked for it to be brought back. So that is now available on the website. I look at it weekly. You know, in the winter supply period, it's kind of inconclusive, but it's useful to know. It's in the summer that we really start getting interested, and the IC will need to be coming up with some recommendations on what do we do with that data. Do we just key it all in one fell swoop in sort of about February, March from the logs or whatever? But cross that bridge when we get to it. Okay, so we're just going to leave it with you.
So, do you want to have a motion that this be recommended to council, that that staff prepare as is stated here? And
You tell me. Do we receive the recommendation? We
No,
adopt the recommendation.
Yeah, this is you're making recommendations to yourselves
Yeah, for
at council.
the meeting. So what do we do in the meeting?
So I would say move the recommendation. This is a recommendation that this committee is making to council.
Yeah.
At council, you will receive that recommendation and move it and pass it, or do whatever
Discuss
with
it,
it.
yeah.
Discuss it as you desire. But at this point in time, I would look to you to perhaps move it and second it and
And call
carry
the
it.
question.
Call the
Move forward.
question.
Yeah. Okay, so I believe it's been moved and say, no, I don't believe it has actually. I'll take a motion. Thanks, and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing as we do these things backwards all the time. So I will call the question. All in favour of the recommendation? With no delivery date. Open delivery date. And opposed? Seeing none, that carries. That's great, thank you. Okay. Now here is where I would have inserted my suggestion / ask / note / memo, but we'll do that after. So Pam, back to you.
So I had emailed everyone this, I should have done it when we did the agenda, but this is a copy of the on table.
I've got a copy. This one says on table.
Oh, this is just the budget, so, okay, good.
Yeah, I think I have them up to them already. Oh, did you get? You're too generous, you passed your copy on. Okay.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
rather than go through the numbers line by line, because it's fairly black and white what we see there, Pam, just give us the
Yeah, no,
salient
that's what I
points.
was going to suggest, was that in doing this budget, I went in with a suggested rate. So I just wanted to talk about it high level, because I think these numbers include the capital that is in the supplemental request, recognizing that it hasn't been agreed to yet. But I just, because we have to adopt do first, second, and third readings of these rates early February, I just wanted to talk kind of at a high level. So at the water budget, I used a 12% increase and put in the known costs. There's been an additional cost since I've done this. We're in the process of negotiating our new insurance rates, and because we have increased values, some of the values we had used needed to be increased for our insurance. It's looking at the insurance costs are going to go up about $13,000, and that's not in this budget. But essentially, by going through with the costs we know, using a 12% rate increase at this point is what staff's recommending. We come down and it looks like we're having a transfer from the general fund of $135,000, but we're not really, because $141,000 of prior years have been rebudgeted. So actually this is, in a sense, a self-funding water budget for this year only. And once we'll have to increase the insurance costs about $13,000, but based on this, sort of regardless of what's agreed to with the capital, which we're going to look at later, staff's recommendation would be a 12% water increase to essentially be self-funding, and if the capital comes in a bit lower, to start putting some money towards reserves, which we haven't been doing in the past with water.
Okay, so obviously the salient point is here that we dropped the parcel tax for all of Lions Bay, and
Yes,
instead recover those funds as a user rate.
that's right.
Just remind us, please, the parcel tax was originally instituted to pay back the capital investment on the infrastructure, is that correct?
It was my understanding it was more, I maybe asked for Haley, it was just a general way of collecting revenue, and it predated the charter, and it's really not a valid reason currently to have a parcel tax.
So
I
under
collected-
where do we actually recover on a parcel by parcel basis the investment in the water infrastructure? Or do we not?
We don't. We just.
So that is purely a property value based assessment going forward. More valuable properties pay for more of the water infrastructure.
No, it's just a flat user rate now.
No, we've invested something like $6 million in our water infrastructure.
Using parcel tax?
Using loan funding.
Yeah.
So the loans are being paid off.
No, the loan payment is part of this budget. We calculate what we need for water.
So
and
it's
we
a parcel by
calculate
parcel charge.
what the user rate has to be in terms of, to pay for that.
Okay,
So the difference this year is that we previously would have got revenue partly from the parcel tax and partly from the water user rates. Now it's going all to user rates. But it didn't really impact the revenue. I calculated it, we needed a 12% increase. It's just we're going to get none of that revenue from the parcel tax, and it's all going to come from the user rates.
so why does Brunswick Beach still show parcel tax?
That was a separate parcel tax, and that is a true parcel tax just for Brunswick Beach.
What was it used to pay for?
Pay for the, sorry, Helen.
It was when Brunswick Beach came into the village, it was to pay for the upgrade to their intake purely to put them online.
So why
That
does
was why
Lions
they
Bay
joined
not
the
have a
village.
parcel tax to pay for the overall Lions Bay upgrade?
Because at the time it was done, there was no parcel tax introduced. We don't have a parcel tax for that.
Except the parcel tax that we see here. That is now being dropped in the 2016
That wasn't the
budget.
purpose of that parcel tax, and that parcel tax predated Brunswick Beach, so Brunswick Beach residents aren't paying it, and it was identified in 2007 as something that we should get rid of, and we're
The
just
water
getting
plant
rid of it now.
upgrades that were all part and parcel of bringing on Brunswick Beach as well as upgrading our 2 water treatment plants to the new drinking, I'll get to in a minute, thank you. Cost about $4 million, were completed in 2009. That was funded by By
It's
what?
funded by debt,
Yes,
in
but
large part.
And
the
so the debt was
costs-
going to be paid back through, at the time, an incorrect use of the parcel tax and a user fee. So we're treating Brunswick Beach differently to the overall project?
I don't think it was ever intended to be paid back by parcel tax.
It was never intended. The Brunswick Beach parcel tax predates the 2009 upgrades that you're talking about. That was in 99, 2000 is when Brunswick came in.
Yes.
So that parcel tax, at that time, the Brunswick residents could either pay, I can't remember the exact amount, but a set amount, or they could pay back over a 25-year period. So that's what this is. This is a certain amount of the residents that didn't pay it all up front, and paying it over 25 years. That's totally different to the water treatment plant upgrades that we did in 2009. They were not funded by parcel tax, that was just incorporated into their water use rates.
Okay, this is all water under the bridge, and the fact that there used to be a parcel tax for Lions Bay was always in error.
No, it was not error. It was set up a long time ago before the community charter even came into existence, and when you read the wording of it, it was just to fund water. The reason it was probably done was because back in those days there were a lot of empty parcels, so a parcel tax applies to every single parcel whether you use the water or not. So there's a good reason to have done a parcel tax then. The reason we're getting rid of it now is the Brunswick Beach residents never came onto that, so they've never been paying that portion, which they should be now.
But that's now absorbed in the rate that
Correct.
all
Yes.
550 water
Yes.
users pay,
Correct.
Yes.
which is good, and that
Yeah.
has been discussed. So the remaining parcel tax is now, we're starting the 25-year amortization of the Brunswick Beach piece.
We're not starting, it's been
No,
going on.
It's been going on?
2003-ish, I'm
Okay.
not sure exactly.
Yeah.
But as we all know, just as a reminder, Brunswick Beach will all of a sudden be paying overall for water $400 a month, a year more than they're
Correct.
used to.
Which will be communicated in a separate communication. And but for purposes of this, we went through the budget, calculated the water costs. We've got the Public Works Manager estimate of her capital from her supplementary. And with a 12% increase, we're basically self-funding this year, because although we have this deficit, it's really just a rebudget of what we'd already taxed for last year.
Okay, so I was going to ask, so when all said and done with the rejiggering of the budget, we'll be somewhat break even, including capex.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, at a 12% rate increase.
The 12% is on the combined, what
Yes,
used to be parcel
yes,
tax and
yes,
rate. Yeah.
Yes, basically it's 12%, but just I've now shown it all coming in as user rates, but
Yeah.
it equates to a 12% increase.
The grants, 246,
That's a rebudget.
that's the
Build
rebudget as
Canada.
well, yes, okay,
So
good.
basically it's $141,508 of a rebudget included in that 135. So
Yeah.
actually, this budget, we were a little bit ahead.
Yeah.
But then I've just found out there's 13,000 of insurance costs. So essentially, it's what I would call a break-even budget when we take into account the rebudgeting we have to do, and that's a 12% rate. So that's what I was looking for to council for water, sewer, and solid waste, just a feel for what the rates are, because that's what we have to do our bylaws in February with those rates. We can still tweak the numbers, we can do less capital or more capital, it'll just vary how much we put into reserves or draw from reserves. But this is, at this point, the maximum capital. I put all the capital in that is
The-
on the supplementary list.
The
from
one, the
Public Works
capex
Manager.
asks that are allocated to water,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yes.
And just remind us, so you've got allocations for professional fees, salaries and benefits, Sunday training, blah, blah, blah. And then there's also another number for internal allocations of 55 even. What is that? What's the difference between the internal allocations and all the other internal
The
allocations?
internal allocations basically net to zero. It's our estimate of the cost of what's provided to water from basically the office and from
Not
Public
directly
Works.
attributable.
Yes, and it's because we want it to be self-funding that we're
Yeah,
required to
absolutely.
allocate some of the costs. And you'll find the same thing in sewer and in solid waste. And it's a net zero impact on a consolidated basis, that it's revenue for the general fund and an expense for the water, sewer, and solid waste.
Very good. Interest payments?
That's on the debt. We have the interest payments and the principal repayment on the water portion of the MFA debt.
Oh, there, interest payment, didn't see it. Okay. Yeah, okay, good.
Yes, I actually just wanted clarification back on the parcel tax and the water, the total water usage rate. So what is the difference between now not having, I just want to know, what do residents have to pay with regards to water, including both this year versus last year? So is it an increase, a net increase of 12%?
I actually have the documentation in front of me. which
Now
I'll
that
give
they
you.
know, yeah, now that
That's
they
what
no
I'm looking
longer
for right
pay the
there.
parcel
Right
tax.
there.
Sorry, I don't know.
They will pay 12% more total than they
Total.
did
That was
last year.
based on 2015,
Yeah.
yeah.
Except
So-
for Brunswick Beach residents who will pay a lot more because they have to pay an extra 400.
So even though we factored that number, so the Brunswick
So
Beach
basically-
increase doesn't help with the total,
No,
No.
that's to pay off
Funding?
their
No.
investment,
Oh,
which it was
okay.
just
No.
sitting there.
Yeah.
okay.
So basically, rates are going up 12%, but Brunswick Beach, theirs will go up 12% as well, but their user rates will jump because they previously weren't paying the parcel tax, and that parcel tax now being absorbed. So I can actually, for the next meeting, I can, because we have to communicate this out to the Brunswick Beach residents, what's happening. I can use the actual numbers once we determine what the rate is, and I can calculate what
So
the
what
actual
are they getting
numbers.
for, what are we getting for this 12% increase? Nothing
Everything you
up-
see here.
Nothing above.
Revenue to balance.
I know,
it.
so anything more than
cap-
last year?
No. You get what you see here. I mean, there's some investment, a little bit,
Yeah,
right?
some-
The net investment.
Yeah, it's basically the capital, you're funding the capital that we'll be
Which-
discussing in the supplement.
Plus
the
all those barrels of
97,000.
chlorine that keep coming in the door.
Okay.
I sign checks for chlorine, it seems like weekly.
All that does is allow us to keep moving forward and make sure that we're paying as we're using, as we're going, what we're using. Simple as that.
So to maintain status
It's
quo.
maintain status quo, that's what we're doing.
To
That's all
maintain
we're
status
really
quo,
doing.
we need to increase by 12%.
That's right.
Okay.
And the biggest, and it's the capital, I mean, which we'll be discussing. But that is a good point, we're just maintaining status quo, we're actually not putting any money aside.
Although,
For
sorry,
future.
I'll get you next. You do have some sort of SCADA stuff in your CapEx budget, do you not, Nick?
In my supplemental?
Yeah.
Correct.
Is that in here?
Would be in the, yeah. the
So we do
numbers.
get a lot of fairly sexy stuff that's long overdue, yes, but to do with control systems and all that stuff. Sorry, Haley.
I was going to say, what we've been trying to do for the last few years with water is actually get to the point where it's self-funding so that the money we receive from water revenue actually pays for the water. So if you look at the last year's 2015 budget, we had to transfer $221,000 from general, so from taxes, just to cover the water. This year, because of the rebudgeting, we're actually not taking anything from the general fund to cover water. We're still not actually putting any money into reserves for future infrastructure. So this is still a work in progress to get to the point where we're actually self-funded.
But we're actually ahead of where we
Correct.
were.
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
But no, that
Absolutely.
221
Absolutely.
Yeah.
should actually be reduced by your 141, right?
Well, essentially it is.
So-
Like, it's
so-
the 221, and what we're saying is the 135, that's actually what I'm reducing. I'm
Yeah, so-
saying that of
so-
the
Just in
135.
terms of the budget.
Yeah,
It'll all come
just
out in the
terms
wash,
of the
that's
budget.
true. And we have yet to have the debate whether we do actually fund amortization and reserves, or we take new loans for that when the time comes, but that's a different discussion.
In this
So
case,
am
we're
I
adding the
correct in saying that
amortization
this is the first year then that we will actually balance the water budget? Including
No.
CapEx?
I'd have to go
I'd
back and
have
look
to
at
go
it
back and look, but we've
historically.
been working towards that. I think there was a year we did very little
Been
CapEx,
working
so we
for-
probably broke even. I
Been
think.
going at this for the last 4 years to get
Mhm.
close to this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. I mean, last year, definitely not. You can see what we had to draw last year. So,
I think though fundamentally there's a communication piece that we may not have touched on, and that is, I think that it's been very important for this council to become very, to be very transparent. And when you have a self-funding utility model, you become a lot more transparent insofar as where the money is going and what you're spending it on, because water is water, and everybody can understand water. They get it, right? It's a lot more nebulous when you're funding things from general
No, I think we all appreciate
general
that.
things. So I think that it's actually a very good thing to be moving towards, because
I don't
you're
think there's
ticking
any
an awful
argument.
lot of boxes with regard to transparency.
I will say that every one of us around the table here is already expecting to hear a lot of screams and pushback on 12%,
Absolutely.
because that's quite a large number. People already think that water is too expensive in Lions Bay. As you know, I do a lot of evangelizing around the fact that we're lucky we have any water at all, but this is a big increase. It is, here's the costs. If anybody has any cost they'd like to cut, let us know now, but there ain't none.
Yeah. It is definitely more transparent when you can say all of our water, the revenue is offset by expenditure, and it's all related to water.
I think from where I sit, the most important thing is that we're in better position now than we were last year, and that we aren't taking money out of general revenue and throwing it into water, that means we're now subsidizing the water system. We're not. Now what we've got is gonna be paid for with what we're charging, and that's the only fair way you can do it.
Hello?
And
So-
we've never been in that position for a long time.
Our total revenue has dropped, correct?
Yeah, it's a
Yes,
bit
because of the
misleading.
$400 EMBC
We
funding.
had the
Yeah.
400,000 last year. It was an in and out, the 400,000,
So
so
then-
it's a little hard to
So
compare.
net hasn't really decreased?
No.
No. So let's just say revenue is maintained, and yet expenditure has decreased significantly. Total expenditure, that line?
And that's just the operating expenditure, and then you have to go down and look at the expenditures below,
But
which is
those-
the capital.
Yeah, but those were funded somewhere, aren't those sort of from carryover from
A
last
portion
year?
is, but the other capital of 97,000, that's new capital this year.
Okay, what are the little brackets? Expenditure, it means.
Yes.
Out,
Okay,
yeah.
out.
Out. And then we also have to take into account, because it's a cash budget, the repayment of the debt principal. So we have interest payments and principal payments that we have to budget for.
So is it mainly this 97,000 that we need to add the 12% increase?
That would be the bulk of it, yes.
Okay,
Majority, that's the whole exercise.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, the 400 distorts it a bit, unfortunately, the,
the
it's,
revenue off the parcel tax combination is neutral-ish.
Yeah, that's what.
The rest of the stuff is neutral. They boosted it 12 points, basically going to the end. The costs are largely the same, reduced in some aspect, but we're putting 97 grand towards the system and hard assets.
Okay.
Yeah, that's $180 per customer, about 550 customers. That's about 12% on what it cost us last year. Okay.
And to your point, if anybody can come up with a better idea, come forward now.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we've got quite a lot of meat in the professional fees and contract services, but that's what the plan is, right? So,
That's the sewage piece and
well, this is only water. We still haven't got to sewage yet. But sewage, I have a few more problems with the cost. But okay, anything else?
nope, that was it.
Okay, thanks. Let's move on.
Water was the biggest. Then for sewer, I am working on a continuity of reserves, which I will.
Sorry,
bring-
Pam, one thing. This will also come out in the sewer, but I'll just interject now before I forget. What's the feasibility of billing this semi-annually or quarterly? I've heard lots of requests. Because this is now, what I just remind people, we've now taken away the parcel tax portion, which people used to be able to defer. And if you're on a cash flow constrained budget, it's quite a wodge of money to come up with what's going to be water plus sewer, $1,200, $1,300, $1,400. Guessing.
Administratively, it's a lot more work. It's usually done annually. Usually it's only done throughout the year if you have metered water. But all the
Yeah.
other costs are usually annual.
Can we think about how we may want to? Can people run a deficit, or do you, when you send a bill to Mr. Jones and Mr. Jones pays, does Mr. Jones have his own account, or do you just have a big pot? I mean, you obviously track individual payers.
No, it goes up against, his individual, so that we can charge interest. The other
Can he just
aspect
be in arrears?
is a cash flow, because we may have residents may have
Yeah,
cash
yeah.
flow issues, but so do we.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So
I
I
would
would say
actually,
that's a big
I
one.
can tell you that'd be a big neg for us.
Yeah, I know.
It's also not due until December 31st, so although we bill it in February and ask for it to be in March, we then give a discount for early payment, but technically, the water utilities is not due until December 31st.
But I don't think we want to be publicising that. Otherwise,
It is
Oh, it is
public
public.
knowledge.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
public.
no.
people who need to know that.
It's,
Okay.
we don't try to hide it. We're very clear that if you want to pay it early, you get an early payment
Yeah.
discount, but it's not due to December 31st,
Okay.
and you will not be charged
There's your
interest.
deferral.
There's a deferral. That's
Yeah.
de facto deferral.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sewer. This budget is based on a 5% increase in revenue, and it's basically a break-even budget, a self-funding budget, with the exception of the capital expenditures. As I was saying, I have been working on splitting out water sewer of the surplus and of the reserves. It hasn't been done for PSAB since 2009, so I've gone back and I've recreated it. I'll be presenting that at the next council meeting, but there is a sewer surplus. So that's why I'm comfortable keeping it at 5%, and this 34,000 can be funded from surplus. And that surplus is built out because we've been finishing favorable to budget because there just hasn't been, Public Works Manager could speak to this, but the staff to do everything that was planned in the budget. So we've had this unintentional benefit of having a bit of surplus. So again, the staff's recommendation is a 5% increase in the sewer rates, which basically would be self-funding, with the exception of the capital expenditures, in which case we'll draw from surplus. to
But
pay
that's
for
from
that.
a
But from
surplus
sewer surplus. This
That's
is
been
coming
funded
from
by sewer users, not by the
Exactly,
rest of Lions Bay.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the reason, that's exactly it, the sewer in particular, only a portion of Lions Bay residents pay it. So if we tax it and we have money left over, it has to stay to be used for sewer.
Mhm. Just, Nick, give us an idea, what's in the $35,000 CapEx?
Yes, we have some safety upgrades that we need to put into the treatment plant. One of them is to replace some, so when we go into the wastewater treatment plant, there's wooden decking.
Yeah.
That wooden decking, I'm uncertain why wood was ever a good idea, but the wooden decking is rotting, so it really should be replaced by a steel grate type of decking inside. There's nowhere for anyone to be able to chain off to actually be able to use life safety equipment. That needs to change. So there's some handrails and things like that. So that's inside the actual water treatment itself. So that's the majority of it. That's 21,000 of it. 14,000 of it is to try to be a bit proactive. We would like to purchase a tight camera because we're going to have to spend an awful lot of money getting a contractor in if we don't have our own to be able to do to enable us to be able to actually inspect the sanitary lines. So we haven't actually cameraed the sanitary lines since I've been here, and I don't have any records of us having done that in quite some time. I've gone back as far as 2008 and couldn't find anything. We're overdue.
For sure.
So we would have to hire a company in to do it anyway.
I used to work for that company, the name of the company is Sewerview, and
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of
anyway, so the point is,
companies that
just
do it.
I cannot emphasize enough, sewer lines are they're almost alive because there's hydrogen sulfide being produced. It eats the rebar, it eats the concrete. You have to inspect your sewer lines and start grounding them before they go bad, because I don't need to tell you what happens when a sewer line goes bad. It's pretty nasty. So you can get it for $14,000.
That is the estimate. If council endorses this ultimately, then I would go out and
Because I would think
build a business case
a full survey is 10, 12. So the payback's a year.
the payback, from what I can tell, it would be just over a year, because we could also use the same camera to look into culverts. And right now, at this point, I'm either going to have to spend the money on contractors to do it, or I can spend the money and train my staff to do it, and we can use it to our benefit moving forward.
Okay, well, we'll get to the
I guess
details.
the other thing too is that you'd end up, as you just alluded to, if we have it, then we're going to be looking at some cost savings on the operational side, because I don't have to ensure that I have money to consistently hire somebody to do that work.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
We are a relatively small community. We have a relatively, not relative, we have a bloody very small sewer system.
Absolutely.
Very, very small and extremely steep,
Mhm.
okay? The chance of, we have H2S gas and stuff like that in there, but it's only for a very short distance and it's under very, very little pressure per se, because gravity pressure take over. Okay, so that's more the major concern. Is something moving because of force or because of pressure, as opposed to gas and hydrogen sulfide being in the system. Secondly, we don't have a large buildup of gas in the system, because really what we've got is a very large septic tank down there. Okay, it's not a sewer system in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't have all the chemicals and all the stuff in it that a lot of them do.
No, it's a lagoon.
Yeah, so my point is, I think that the first thing we would do before we start buying equipment like that is to find out what other municipalities of our size, similar topography, would have that kind of equipment, what they do. Because I think that's a very good example of how, where we need to go. We can't be looking at North Van, West Van, or any of those places, because their systems are huge.
Most hire CCTV companies to camera it.
Yeah, and I think
Big or
that
small,
might be the
most-
best.
Most hire CCTV companies.
Well, we're not, let's get to the asks later. Let's not lose track of what we're trying to do now. So the current asks are fully encapsulated in this CapEx. Is that correct?
Yes.
The current set of
Yes.
asks. Okay, good. So this is, unless we can think of something new that we've forgotten, like gold plating the inside or whatever, because I hear that helps things with H2S anyway. We're looking at worst case scenario here.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
and
sort
so 5%.
Yeah, and that was sort of the point with me doing these percentages. In a way, it's almost an independent decision in terms of what you're comfortable with. I can show you that in water's case, we do have a break-even budget with the maximum capital in there. With sewer, we're drawing on reserves, but we have those reserves in sewer.
What is the total
so
sewer
that we
reserve
can-
today?
That's what you can know next council meeting. There's definitely enough to cover this, but I'm just in the final stages of splitting that, and I'll be presenting it at the next council
The reason
meeting.
I ask is because if we can draw more of it and give a 0% increase, that may help soften the blow on the water rate increase, at least for the Kelvin Grove people.
Right. We could. I guess I'm reluctant to set that precedent. It's sort of almost like I like to send the message that at a minimum it's a 5%, to cover your sewer. And we do have that sort of, but it's really almost an on paper reserve. I mean, it's cash
Ultimately
versus
what's
having
going to
a
happen,
reserve.
if long-term, medium-term plans come to fruition, we're going to be charging a lot more for sewer pretty quickly because we're going to be looking at a
That's right.
10 times the size plant and village-wide sewer is
That's right.
brought in phases.
Yeah. So I'd actually prefer not to take from the surplus at all, but the rate increase needed to cover this would be so high, and we are hitting them with water. So I thought 5% was sort of still sending the message that we always have to charge for sewer, but then.
I would tend to agree
Start-
with that. I think
yeah.
we're better off, because we're dealing with a smaller percentage
Smaller group.
of people,
Yes,
smaller group of
exactly.
people. And I think it's justified, there's a tax increase. There's been a general tax increase already of 12%. We need to, that's only because it doesn't hit the rest of the residents if they don't have sewer, they're on septic systems. Although they have other costs that they come up every 30 years, 40 years, and all of a sudden they get hit with a huge bill because they've got to replace the septic system. Whereas it's ongoing in Kelvin Grove, so.
Plus pumping as well.
Yeah.
You're going to pay one way or the other. Yeah, I mean, and let's not forget that current surplus belongs to Kelvin Grove users only. We can't start using that for a larger
No, that's
sewer
right.
project.
Well, that's exactly
Very
why
true.
we have the surplus we do,
Yeah.
is.
Well, the point is that at some point we need to spend it, but
Yep.
we don't know what the number is yet.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
okay. Okay, well, this is good enough for government work, to use American military expression.
And last one is the solid waste budget. At this time, I put in a 2% increase here, and I based the contract expenses based on what the 2015 actual costs were. Plus, we know the tipping fees are going up, so we got an estimate from Smithwright. And the other added piece is this contract. We're beginning a new contract in April, so those fees at this time are a bit unknown. So I was recommending 2% for basically a break-even budget. Essentially covers what I estimate the contract fees to be based on 2015 actual and the tipping fees.
Do we have any indication at all what the costs are gonna be after this contract expires? No?
No.
Well, so we do have some, and this you'll see in my report next. And I would suggest that, or would only ask that we do a little bit of work with Metro, because although we use a contractor, we do dump in Metro. Metro is going to very differential pricing on green waste versus non-green waste, because of the money that's to be made on green waste and the composting thereof. They report that their tipping fees have gone down 40%, 2015 on 2014.
Are we talking just for the green waste, or?
I don't know.
Because when we talked to Smithwright, the tipping fees had gone up. And the only other piece I
The
would
Smithwright
add is
sees us
that
coming is the problem.
we often, to get those discounts, there's a minimum amount, and we usually don't hit the minimum. So,
For what it's worth, GVRD reports a 40% reduction in non-organic solid waste after moving to bi-weekly collection and diversion of organics. So I told you wrong. Will our RFQ for solid waste take that into account? The Metro tipping fee is $80 per tonne for a 9+ tonne load, and very much higher, triple that for less than 9 tonnes. Smithwright has been very clever lately. They don't give us our loads anymore. They just give us a flat rate. We have them now.
We have tonnages now, we just got them.
There's a KPI.
Absolutely, and there'll be a report coming forward with regard to organics.
There's a beautiful KPI.
It is
And
lovely.
trends to see how all that stuff.
Yes.
Okay, I know you guys are on top of that. I just don't want Smith Wright to take us for a ride because
Realistically, that should kind of get taken care of in the RFP process.
it's competitive. Okay, go.
Yes, Pam, I wanted to ask actually, what are the, so here's some, under expenditure, supplies and education and internal allocations, what are those?
Okay, the internal allocation, again, is just the allocation of general fund time that we have to allocate to sewer, because it is a separate fund, so it sort of nets out to zero. It's the charges to sewer, solid waste, and water, and then the income comes into the general fund, because we have to properly reflect all of the true costs of running these three funds, and a lot of that is, time in the general fund. So it would be staff time.
Oh,
But then
staff-
general municipal goes down by the same amount.
Yeah.
So it's staff time.
It's staff time effectively,
So
all
it's,
intents and purposes. Yeah.
Right.
And supplies and education?
It's, I could look in the details of what we actually spend.
Hand wipes.
It's,
Is it? I don't know.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Because-
It's mainly made up of, when we send our green waste stuff separate to Smith Wright, so when we send it to our contractor to get chipped, that's actually what most of that cost is. And then we've left some in there for education, because obviously if we're having a new RFP, we'll have a new piece to go out to the public for more information about organics.
That's great, that's smart. And so, for example, I just signed a check today for green waste chipping for the Christmas trees, I assume. It was $560, for a little bit of chipping. I also note that we have a chipper, by the way, just in terms of utilization.
So, but,
Sorry. Oh, you mean everything that went to Evergreen?
Yeah.
That isn't just for the Christmas trees, though.
The point is, whatever it was $500, and so the 2,500 is probably about right, because we probably do it a few times.
but going back to the sewer budget, it does have a line item that says salary and benefits, and then at the bottom, it's in internal allocations, so are they
Yeah,
different?
the salary and benefit are for time of public works specifically for sewer. But the other internal allocation is just the general costs of, like our staff
Non-public?
time, the
Okay.
accounting department,
Non-public works
everything.
time.
Bill preparation,
Yeah.
phone
So
calls.
in terms of the salary, when we actually do the payroll, it's all located on the timesheets, what public works employees do. So when they specifically work on water, it goes into the water, and that appears in the salaries and benefits line, the same with sewer. But then there's that general time.
And they don't, because it doesn't appear in solid waste, so Public Works doesn't actually ever work on
it's all
solid
contract.
We
waste.
aren't allocated to, it's contracted out.
It's contracted out, right? It's all done by Smith Wright.
So how
that's why it's
confident
the
are you on
contract.
your numbers on the solid waste?
Well, they are an estimate. I'm comfortable in the fact that it's 2015 actual, so that's why I think the allocation is correct. And then Smith
In
Wright has
terms of cost
informed
or in
us.
terms of revenue?
Well, in terms of between, with the collection, the recycling, the green waste, the allocation. And then the revenue is just essentially what I need to cover these costs. So barring the fact that we're going to RFP, and it's a bit of an unknown, if it came in a bit lower, then we'd have a bit of a surplus. And if it came in a bit higher, we'd have a bit of a deficit, and then we could compensate that by what
Why
we
does the
charge
green
next
waste
year.
go up 20K?
That's actually based more on
Haley knows.
actual. Yeah, it's,
So the budget in
She wants to
2015
tell us.
no, it's okay.
The budget in 2015 was done before they
Yeah.
changed to organic, so that was based on the cost from the year before.
Okay,
This is
yeah,
actually based on actual from 2015. And in terms of the increase, I asked Smith Wright what the increase will be based on Metro's increase to their tipping fees, and that's the $120 a month increase to the LC.
That we've incorporated in this budget.
Yeah, this vanity project gets paid for by the end user. I'd like to know who gets the revenue from selling that compost, by the way, but, okay.
They don't talk about that.
Yeah, I'm not on that committee. I don't want to be either.
So kind of in summary,
Or the bird facility.
we're recommending 12% increase for water, 5% increase for sewer, and 2% increase for solid waste. And recognizing we still have tweaks to do in the budget, but to me, we set those rates, and then the numbers fall out where they do if, we have a little less capital, a little more capital. We already know the insurance costs are going to be a bit higher than what I have in here, but in terms of rates, setting them almost independently as a guide.
Well, I'm curious about the solid waste. You're talking about getting an RFP. don't we know what we want? So why don't we just go to an RFQ?
Sorry, I
Oh.
misstated, it's an RFQ.
Actually, I did actually, yeah, an RFQ. And then we see who comes forward. I know Public Works Manager has suggested that we are a bit limited in who will apply because of our steep terrain, that
Mhm.
we need to have the ability to do the hand garbage.
Now, I believe it's policy that we actually require our users to have a tag for excess garbage. I've never seen that enforced by the Smith Rod in the current case, or by the municipality. Are we going to tighten up on that? Are we going to let it still be fairly carte blanche, laissez-faire? What do we want to do about that? Yeah, that's my question. That is in fact my
I
question.
think it's a question that we could put out there. I don't have an answer right now.
We can easily tie that into the RFQ.
Quite frankly, I prefer not having a bag fee. Why? Because it's Lions Bay. The Lions Bay way is we collect our garbage. You know, there was abuse in the past where contractors were putting stuff out, and I think we have a way around that now, I don't know. But if we do, I'd like to hear about it at some point. On the other hand, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, you know, on every second Friday, I have a lot of stuff out there. But I have a family.
Well, I think that.
I try.
In order, yeah, but we would have to, I think that what would have to happen is staff would have to review what other areas are doing. Right now, and we have to do some final calculations to find out where we're at in the Metro 2020 and 2015 targets, because we are mandated to, do our best to achieve those. So we need to find out where we are with our 2015 targets, insofar as did we meet Metro's targets, yes or no? If no, then we need to figure out how we're going to meet the 2020 targets, because we are part of Metro.
Is that a tonnage-based thing?
It's tonnage-based and it's
Go ahead.
diversion-based. So so right now, the target for 2015 from Metro was 70% diversion. I think we may actually get that. If not, we're really, really close, which is phenomenal. For 2020, it's 80% diversion.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that we don't lose sight over the next 5 years how we're going to get to that.
And I'll just point out to my colleagues that the committee that runs this at Metro is called the Zero Waste Committee. So you know where the intention is to go.
Yes.
100% diversion to recycle or compost.
So I would say that insofar as not implementing garbage tags, that probably is an antithesis to where we want to go, which is more diversion. So how do we help people divert more?
I believe it's policy, Peter. We just need to look at it. If it's a policy that we're going to enforce and activate and use, then great. If it's not, let's take it off the books. But I suggest that we probably do need to resume the designated garbage bag way. You have to buy a specific garbage bag printed in a hard to replicate color, or however we do it. I think we need to probably tighten up on that, even though it's only 2%. Now, I mean, I'll take nods around the table if we're okay with the increase, but I would suggest that it'd be a little premature because we haven't quite given the nod on the capex underlying it. But in terms of the sort of the headline rates, 12% on water. Are we good with that? Do we have a choice? Not really. 5% on sewer. If I was a Kelvin Grove resident, I would say, what's changed?
What's changed is capital. We haven't purchased any capital for sewer
It's
for a
capital.
while.
Okay, so that's the answer to the
that
question.
actually is an easy one to explain, actually.
Any regulatory costs associated with our permit or anything? Inspection costs?
Increases? No, because they have been allocated in the.
So labor has increased, yes. Every time we get the thing pumped out, that costs more than it used to. Okay, so that's all good. That's defensible. And 2% on solid waste. I don't think anybody would argue that. I think we speak around that it costs more to dispose of green waste than it does and this is a mandated target because we're a first world country, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I think you've got the nods around the table.
The other thing, sorry, just to jump in with regard to the solid waste. As we move forward in the various programs to increase diversion, we're also going to, there's the cost savings associated with that, with the increased diversion, generally speaking, would probably get plowed into an increase of awareness campaigns, because that's how we got to where we are right now, is we put some money and effort and time into the awareness campaign with regard to organics. That's why we have the diversion rates that we do right now compared to 2014. So
Well,
there-
if
there's
you know those
offsetting
KPIs,
costs,
I'd love
right?
to have them shared with us.
I am going to share those with you the
We have a
minute I
great
the time
website.
to write the report, because it's a good news report.
Well, yeah, but you know, KPIs are only worth anything if they're trends. So there needs to be a process to continually update. And I know what you're going to say, and I know what you're thinking. Yes, I know it takes time. I would suggest that council priority 1 it justifies the spending of the resource on it.
So, I would suggest that the following motion, somebody would like to make something along these lines, and this would just be my suggestion to you, that it be recommended to council that the percentage increases for water, 12%, sewer, 5%, and solid waste, 2%, be used for 2016 draft budget purposes. And so you would bring that to council tonight, and you can discuss it further, but that would be the consensus of what you've just done here today, so.
I would just say, subject to further discussion on expenditure asks, capital and
Which you would-
otherwise.
which
But that's
you would
draft
presumably
budget.
discuss tonight.
Yeah, that's fine.
Or in
Fine.
future.
Do we call the question on that? Even though this is a council, this is a committee of the
Well,
whole.
somebody needs to make a motion to that effect, and
Yeah.
then second.
And we do call the question. I mean, because in our other committees, we just do it on the nod. I mean, we do consensus. Unless somebody violently objects.
I
But
think
this-
just from a procedural standpoint, you want to be making recommendations to council. I know it's the same group of people, but you want to make
No,
recommendations
that's
to
a-
council, and
for
then,
formality.
and then you can revisit that recommendation when it comes back.
Okay, can I have a motion as stated by Peter? Thanks. Second. Further discussion? All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
And
Thanks,
then
Pam.
The only piece I would add for that is we are scheduled per the financial calendar to go to first, second, and third reading at the next council meeting on these rates. But, you know, depending on what happens with the capital and if council requires more time, it would just necessitate a special meeting, maybe, because it's February 2nd is the first meeting.
Where
But
was
we have
this
to-
discussion on the financial calendar? Was it
It was
set for
here.
today?
Yes, it was. It's tight with, because of the deadline of getting the utility bills out at the end of February, and we're required to have the
But that's the
bylaws
end. What
prior
about
to
the
that.
start of this discussion? I mean, I know the bills are due. That's the drop dead point. But you know, it gives us very little time to.
No, it does, and that's what I'm saying, is that if you're uncomfortable with the February 2nd, we can have a special meeting to have first, second, and third readings, so we could discuss it one more time at February 2nd, but it would require a special meeting just to do the first, second, and third reading of the bylaw,
Okay, well,
if,
let's see if we
if
can
you
avoid
needed
that.
the
but
time.
If we need it, we need it. You know, I think I would be adamant that this is the year where we fully discuss this, where things are not as swept aside because we're out of time. It may require a few special meetings. Okay, so we're going to move on to
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I don't follow that, because it's been brought to a COTW meeting, we've had a discussion around the table right now, we're looking at this stuff. It looks relatively reasonable, it's a good news, for the most part, it's good news, based on what's been going on in the economy right now and everything else. I think that it seems reasonable, rather than us sitting here, and we do this all the time, we create these conversations, wanting to go on forever, and I'm saying,
we haven't had the conversation yet, Jim. We're about to talk about it
no, I
now.
understand. All I'm saying, though, is that some of this stuff, we do need to move on.
My point exactly, which is why I would have preferred to have this discussion about a month ago. That's why I asked where it was in the financial calendar. I'm hearing this, the financial calendar leaves a very, very short window to have this discussion on the utility bills. I would suggest that for next year we need a little looser, meaning this discussion needs to take place sooner, which everything moves up 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know what the number is. Okay, so we'll move on to the numbers underlying the raises.
Exactly. And that's sort of why I wanted the rate discussion to be independent, recognizing we haven't decided on the capital, but I'm arguing in some ways it is somewhat independent of the rate discussion.
How so?
Because I've shown that 12%, regardless of, I put the maximum amount of capital in, and even if we don't have all that capital, I'm still recommending 12%.
Oh, I missed that
And with-
point.
And with sewer, I'm recommending 5%. I've got the maximum amount of capital in, and we're drawing from reserves. But if capital is less, we'll just draw less from reserves. So that was sort of what I prefaced the whole argument with, was so that you wouldn't feel rushed, that to me the rate conversation is almost separate from what the capital is going to be.
Oh, I totally missed
And
that.
then-
Okay,
yeah.
so the rate is,
Yeah.
is independent of
I'm
whether
recommending
we
that
approve the
rate
capex.
regardless of the capital.
Okay, did the rest of
Yeah.
you get that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. So, just to reassure you, because I don't want you all to think you're being rushed, but that's why I think, I sort of, as I was doing the budget, I realized that this year is a year I think we should separate the rate discussion from the capital.
I'm good with that.
Not so much with the other capital for general fund, because that's directly going to have an impact on the tax rate.
Here's
But
my
in
one
terms
problem.
of just for the utilities.
We don't know yet what the IMP is going to tell us. And it may tell us that we need more capex. What are we going to do then?
Well, for water, I would suggest that if there was anything large with water, it would go into the 2017 budget. I discussed this with the Public Works Manager, and then that ties into our debt discussion.
what if it's an
in terms
emergency?
of-
I can't conceive what that might be, right? I don't think they were expecting anything out of water. But I do know roads. I think we're going to be told something.
But we don't have to make decisions on that yet.
And roads,
Yeah.
correct.
But the
And we don't have a
roads-
roads fund today.
No, but in terms of the roads, that's all part of the general fund, and we have a lot more time to do the general fund budget.
Yeah,
This
and we
is
don't bill
just
for
for,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in no way suggesting, so that ties nicely into the next discussion about the supplementals, is that what I'm looking for council is for all of you to see everything's out on the table now, and again, fine tuning it, and as we get to a smaller list, we can supply different information, do a business case. This is on the agenda for the next committee of the whole on February 2nd as well, to look at this again, and then have more fine-tuned budget numbers, and that's sort of, to me, the month of February is spent looking at this budget in terms of the general fund. The tight deadline is only on the utilities.
Fair enough. That sounds good. Yeah, those are good round numbers, so I think we'll do as a result. I had misunderstood, but I'm happy with going on with it. So just before we get into the budget request, give us a rundown of your current or proposed policy on the threshold that you would expect to see a fairly stringent business case on a given expenditure for, in terms of how did that number arise? You know, how do we know it's 21,000, not 23,000? What other things do you want to see before you present a number to council for a decision on?
Well, I mean, I guess that's open for discussion. We can see in terms of, I think it would be more around numbers. If we felt it was too much of an estimate, we'd want to drill down. But again, I see us screening a lot of these items first, eliminating some, and then coming with a more condensed list, in which case we would then do business cases
But on
if
what basis
required.
are we screening these numbers today?
I think it's just council priorities in a way, looking through them all, seeing the scope of them, recognizing that with my preliminary budget, I have in a 5% tax increase just as a placeholder, and we have about $300,000 left without drawing from reserves and without the capital, without anything to
Okay.
spend. That's just sort of a ballpark, but I think we're ahead of last year in that we've got all of the requests out there. They may seem overwhelming, but the idea is to see them all together and then council to
I thought we were missing something, to
prioritize
be
them
honest.
and discuss, and the list is smaller than last year's.
Okay, good. Well, let's jump in. Does everybody need a break? Water? Pit stop? Okay, let's go. So we're now on page 14 of 30, and I would not propose to go through these line by line because everybody has done that already. Please call out once, unless.
The only thing I was going to interject, I apologize,
Yep.
is I wanted, for transparency, I wanted to sort of strip the budget and start with the bare bones budget and show you how much money you had. This was something I sort of had second thoughts on. This is fire department capital maintenance, and there's some water infrastructure capital maintenance. It's sort of a given. It's capital, but it's sort of the capital that's required for ongoing maintenance. So that's why I've highlighted it separately, and my recommendation is that that is capital that we do need.
Is that in the blue?
It's on the first page. I have total fire capital maintenance of 31,000, and then you'll find when we do the water, there's another number too as well.
Okay.
So an argument could be made to actually include that in your base budget but I wanted to show you that it was more for transparency.
Yeah,
I wanted
that's-
to show that I have no capital in the budget, but this is almost the base capital that we need to maintain the fire department. And then the extras were more of the supplemental were underneath. And I've done a similar thing when we get to water, that I've identified some key infrastructure. maintenance.
Okay, I
So I just wanted to add that,
I think
explain
we
what
get that,
was.
that sounds about right. None of these things that we're talking about here, unless it's maybe the water things, are currently in the utility rates discussion. So this is sort of,
Exactly. There's nothing.
certainly the
in
fire
that's
is not in
currently-
utility rates, so this is kind of new.
Yes.
So, how do we want to do this? Go around the table. Ron?
I'm wearing black today, let me go first.
Okay, go first.
Relative to the bigger picture, I have done some back of the envelope calculations. And in my 5th year of doing this, I gotta tell everybody, and Councillor Ben would feel the same, I'm rather sick about making choices when we're not really fulfilling what we need to do. I believe that in the bigger picture, there's going to be tax increases, they're gonna be a very big number, just to get to halfway to where we wanna go. I think some of the pain is gonna be spread throughout the departments, some of it's gonna be through council's ask. I think relative to the fire department, if you want to, because there's other topics here, of the $153,000 that's here, and I'm not an expert on this, but I would take out the burn building for 25, the fire hall expansion for 43, and the fire capital, the training lot being paid for 31.
Funny enough, those are the ones I had crossed out as well, including the 4,000 for radio, not because I don't think we need them, but that's pending a report that I've been asking for. And this is why I ask things about business cases. You know, we have a lot of radios, and we sign a lot of bills to Surrey Dispatch, Ecom, Bowen. We seem to have a lot of radios. And we've been talking about using Ecom standard for public works as well to get some sort of, I don't know if it's economies of scale, although they tell us there is. No. But at least economies of labour scale. Yeah, Heather?
I have confirmed with Chief Oliver in the past that we do require both the Bowen Island, because that's the repeat station, the Ecom charges for the rental of the radios, and then Surrey Dispatch, so those are all costs that we do need.
So Ecom is not dispatch. That's just when we see
That's
an
for the
Ecom bill,
that's for
it's
the
the radios
lease.
only.
And just so you know, in 2018, they're changing their entire structure, and the cost for that is going to increase significantly. Significantly.
Remind us the cost of a radio?
We pay Ecom, it's not done, but I think we have 21 radios through Ecom for the fire department, and we pay roughly 20,000 a year, give or take, for Ecom service. And so it's the radios, plus they have their dispatch station, it's all their infrastructure, and then it's done on a share basis, is how they figure it out. They actually gave us an incredible deal. The cost that we have is really low compared to everybody else.
Yeah, because we were sort of a founding member.
No, it's because we actually took their old radios that will no longer work in 2018. So when we did it, we knew that it was just,
Oh, I see.
so in 2018, the cost is going to increase significantly.
So what is Surrey then?
They're the people who do the dispatch.
They're primary fire
Yeah.
dispatch for all of the lower
Yeah.
mainland.
And so what's Ecom dispatch?
Ecom is where every resident phones in to call in, so
Oh, so that's the call center.
911 is, 911 is Ecom.
And so if it's fire, it goes to Surrey.
Yes.
And Surrey calls us on the radio.
Correct.
Well, if I could have a little clarity, Ecom does the whole service if you want them to do it. But because the 3 North Shore departments use Surrey for the fire dispatch, the call goes to Ecom for 911, who relays it to Surrey, and then Surrey sends out the dispatching to the North Shore. The reason Lions Bay is with Surrey in particular is because they use mutual aid with the other 3 departments, so they can't break away from that. So we can't go to Ecom for a fire dispatch as well. We're too small to.
It all goes into the fire department budget package, and you know that's a larger discussion. Okay, fine. So radios, I withdraw my objection to the radio. If we need $4,000 worth of radios.
So Mayor Burr, in terms of moving this along with the time that we've got,
Yep.
I would ask that my colleagues speak up, or we call that the first cut of the fire department budget.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm still not sure about this whole process. We received this from Andrew in mid-December, and he has like a whole bunch of numbers here. So you've gone from this to this?
All I've done is I've split it. I've basically taken his base budget, and it is in our base budget. And I've gone over this with Andrew. I've actually added another column for Andrew, so it was very clear on what I've done. And then I've taken things that I considered the extras and I put them on this sheet.
So all his
It's
asks
all accounted
are
for. In
here.
fact, some of the numbers we increased because we felt he had underestimated
Some of them are
what he
operating
needed.
costs
And I met with
yeah.
Andrew one-on-one last week to show him, so I represented his budget to him with an added column saying this is what is in the budget, and I showed him where it was. And we did a reconciliation to reassure him that it's either, the bulk of it's in our base budget, and then everything else that I didn't put in the base budget that I pulled out is here, and then some is in a personnel section that will be in a closed meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
I just don't understand how we're making decisions on whether, if something should be in or out, just,
It's based on a high-level strategy, and I would have liked to see business cases for all of these things. They're not forthcoming. We have to make the choice based on the information we're given. I think it's fairly clear that there's a medium-term strategic imperative to do something with the burn building that's currently shuttered, I believe. I don't know, have you told us? Certainly not in use. Certainly I do not want to be throwing CapEx into this fire hall. It's too small for the fire trucks. Ultimately my goal, my personal goal, as a member of council would be to negotiate a lease with Flinro, Modi, whoever is the person, I think Flinro, a long-term lease for a new fire facility up there, subject to Andrew say so, because I will say that when the call goes out, we have people running, bicycling, motorbiking and carring to the hall. And Fred, we've had this discussion, it's 2-3 minutes average response time from the call going out on the pager to the truck rolling. If the truck is sitting at the fire hall, that's now at the pit, it's going to be 10 minutes or more. So these are decisions to be made. But I believe that today, this year, is not the year to be putting the best part of $100,000 into fire buildings.
And I can request a business case for any of this from Andrew. I can request a business case for the burn building for the next council meeting, if you'd like to see that.
I would suggest it's not a 5-page report. It's a template,
Okay.
and it's dates, risks, where does the number come from,
And
et cetera,
total
et cetera.
estimate to completely finish it.
for me, it's like additional courses and training, $5,000. I don't even know what that's for. So whether for me to say it's in or it's out, what would I be basing that on?
Do we want to spend that on our fire department? I agree. That's why I keep asking for. At what point do we have a threshold for business case? I would suggest the threshold's $5,000.
I think it's $5,000, but also if it's something you're not going to consider at all, I don't want to waste staff's time with doing a business case. We just asked them to put everything out there that they wanted, and then we would do this process of fine tuning, and then I would go back and ask for business cases on things you needed more information
I
on.
think, and I agree with that, I think that, and everybody's hit on salient points here, but the most important part of that is that we know certain costs, training costs, $5,000 for a fire department that size, that's nothing. I mean, that's a perfectly reasonable figure. As a matter of fact, I think it's low.
I don't,
Yeah.
I
But
don't
that's
think- I don't
This
think
is
supplemental.
additional.
It's
This is
additional.
additional.
It's
Additional training, that's
to what
fine.
they have a base training in there, and
That's
this was
fine.
additional that he wanted.
But given, we have to trust in the budget process as much as we possibly can. So I'm looking at our CFO saying, we have certain rules and guidelines in place. My questions come, I look at the big ticket items and I'm saying, I don't, I question whether or not, we need it. And I don't know anything about it, okay? So I'm saying, okay, so we got $31,000 to pave a training lot, engine 63 truck carport, okay? Fire hall expansion, okay? Burn building, $43,000. Additional operating costs, software for laptop.
Yeah, what are you saying about it, Jim?
Well, all I'm saying is that these are all, like, I look at the laptop cost, for example, laptop for the fire chief, $1750 required to use purchase orders. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay, and I
So,
can give you more
and we
information on that.
need
yeah.
information to make
Yeah.
that decision.
This was sort
I
of the
look at this
starting
stuff and
point.
there's questionable things in here that I think that we need to look at.
Mhm.
Not because it's the fire department, just because the numbers don't, I don't necessarily know what they're for.
Right.
Okay, they're outside of what maybe they're not, maybe
That's
we
right.
do it all the time, I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
But we need to see more than just this.
Yeah, and
to
I think
determine
that was sort of what I'm looking for. For
I
the
hear
next
you.
meeting,
I
I
think
can
it's a
bring
good
back
approach.
Yeah.
additional information. Like I can tell you right now, the laptop for the fire chief, given we want him to start using purchase orders. And so as a staff, I would recommend that getting him a laptop so he can start doing purchase
Okay.
orders, so he can just put the bow around the change in the accounting procedures.
Okay.
But I realized you wouldn't have that information. It was such a large amount of information we got. We wanted to get it out there as quickly as possible. And then what we didn't do last year is have a bit more time to look at it. And any additional information you require for the next meeting, I'll bring, so we can further the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about the best part of $3,000 to provide the chief a laptop. He already has a laptop, I assume, because he writes emails. But if it is your recommendation that he needs a separate one for village purposes, okay. I am jealous of every $1,000 we spend. And do we really need to spend $3,000 to give the chief a laptop so he can do purchase orders? What's wrong with his existing private laptop? But, okay, if that's the
We
recommendation.
can address that, but
But
there are things we'll address when we come back.
The other thing that jumped out at me, and this is silly, but I looked at this, the cost of a gas meter and test cylinder, $1,450, that's ridiculous. We buy them all the time, and we sure as hell don't pay $1,500 for them.
Mhm.
So I don't know what there is different about this, maybe there's something different about it, I don't know.
Yeah, and we have no backup, so we don't know.
Yeah.
But, you know, I would suggest that it's not our job to dicker on the pricing. It's do we want it or don't we?
Yeah, that's right.
Staff are doing their best to make this as
Yeah.
efficient as possible. You know, so I quibbled on Peter's steam-driven laptop that we just bought him, $1,500 from the vendor. And I looked it up. Did you get my email?
I did.
Yeah. So it's actually a $1,250 laptop.
And actually, I'll
Pretty
tell you
fancy
now,
laptop.
we are required to get a 3-year with them. We get the
That's
installation for
including the
free,
3
which
year
is about
service.
3 or 4 hours that they normally would charge separately at $110 an hour. Plus, they do require us to get the 3-year warranty.
Anyway, the point is,
And that's the
it's a
difference.
pretty good deal.
Yeah.
That's all, you know. You know what my laptop costs? Pretty nice one. $340.
Well, if I
Um,
may say, it's going to be a really good deal because you're going to appreciate all the work that I do from home on it.
There you go, yeah.
Did you get him a super fast internet card?
So,
Okay.
so,
So,
Oh, if I could just interject, to go on what two of you have said about some of these issues, I think the bigger issue here isn't so much the items as to where we're going with this. Like, if we are going to be moving the hall, then the burn building, fire hall expansion, and the paving is pointless at this point. So we need to make a decision where we want to see this thing go before we can approve
That's
this
the
kind
other
of
side of it,
budgeting.
that's exactly right.
But as far as like a 63 truck carport, I mean, you can get these little quick fix sheds or something that'll sit on the side as a temporary basis if they want to protect it. I'm sure you can do it a lot less than $5,000, but I'm not going to dicker over the price. But I think, to reiterate, I would say, is just say, we got to figure out, do we really want to look into moving everything up to the pit, or are we going to keep them there? And that's going to affect the decision making at this point.
I'll get to you next, Peter, but I'll just interject on that one. Yes, that's true, and we haven't been presented with that choice, and we haven't discussed it, let alone made a decision on it. On the other hand, we're in a tight budget. So do we want to be spending these big ticket items, the best part of $100,000 this year? That is the question. Not ever, but this year. That's for us to decide here and now. And we've been provided some guidance. We haven't yet seen the draft budget. So I'm understanding, Pam, that you will say, if something is maybe, we leave it in. If it's a definite no, now we tell you now.
Mhm.
Peter?
Well, I was going to save most of my comments for the close with respect to some of the fire department issues. But just to touch on what Fred's brought up, I think it's really important. These are big ticket items for a village like Lions Bay. And my sense of it is, without having really had an opportunity yet to dive into the fire side of things, but I sense that what we really need is a fire services review to provide a strategic plan for the village going forward. Where is this fire department going? What's its current capacity? What do we want it to be? There's a lot of asks, as we'll discuss later on, about other things. But before going down any of these roads, I think you really need to have a sense of where is this fire department going. And I think it's going to be important to have that discussion about bringing somebody in to provide that kind of an oversight, an independent review. And I've done them before, and we'll discuss it more, but I just wanted to make those comments at this point.
Okay, absolutely right. And you know, our job is very much strategic overview. So let's just bring this home. Unless I hear violent objections, we are going to say okay to everything except $25,000 building, burn building, 43.4 fire hall expansion, and 31,000 fire capital training block. Everybody good with that? Which was what you said 10 minutes ago.
I did, but in the spirit of where we're going here and we're quibbling with the nits here, if I did my math here, the ask is 153. We took out 25, 43, and 31 for a net to the fire department of 54. I'd say let them work out how they can save $4,000 and let's give them 50. There.
Maybe down the road, but I don't think we're there yet because we haven't
No,
seen
that's-
the expenditure budget.
There you
For
go.
all I'm understanding that it's going to be higher. So this is just
What
the
close
the
enough.
operating expenditure?
the operating expenditure.
Yeah.
So we don't know what that is,
Don't know
and
yet.
that's,
I don't know what that is. I do know one thing that's coming, and I think we will probably end up approving it, and that's doubling the weekend standby fee. That's going to cost how much? Potentially.
It's on the closed meeting agenda.
So anyway, the point is, we don't yet know.
Yeah.
So to start nailing down numbers now.
Well, it's like just, I hit the number for 50, 54, fine, move on.
In general, my response to this would be not this year, and when it is the year, it would only be on the back of a pretty thorough business case, including the longevity, the service life, the transferability to new facility, etc., etc. Okay.
wait, so if we say no to the burn building, what happens to it?
Sits.
Sits empty, and they're not allowed to use it, do
But
they know?
they're not supposed to be using it now, there's a stop work order on it.
It's red tag.
I mean, to me, if we did ask, I mean, the one thing about advantage of asking for a burn building business case would be, to me, the key part of it was how you get the stop work order off it. I mean, that's what would have to be addressed in the.
And this is part of the
and
fire
about
services
it.
review. So if it turns out that we become a major training department for everybody around, well then, yeah, then there's part of your business case right there. But we haven't seen that yet.
And to be fair to the chief, we haven't asked him for that,
No,
so that's what I'm
exactly.
saying. I could ask him for a business case on the burn building. If anything, just to get in writing what the plan is to.
I think he wrote a little bit under his original,
Yeah, no, he did. Yeah, we have had some information, but to me, the big part is it's never, to me, satisfactorily being addressed.
Yeah.
How
Okay,
to
well, so we've
make
decided that
compliant.
those are the ones that are out. Everybody good with that? Okay, so we'll move on the nod on that one to page 15.
May I go again?
Yes. Go.
In terms of making this 15 and 16. And
I'll just say the highlights are the blue is water and the green is.
yeah. So total here, let's look at this in the big picture. The total is 353. I don't believe any of the works department's going to waste their time putting it forward. I don't think anything is frivolous in this thing. And for me, it's hard. Doing surveys versus bridge repairs versus removal and this kind of thing. It's too much for me to actually figure it out. I see a total of 353. I see a whole bunch of things, of which the big number appears to be, and tell me this, Nikki, the big one, which is the 139,000 plus the 15, that's for the property that they issued in front of the Turpin Safe Grounds. Thank you. So I see 353, and I'm just going to draw a line in the sand and say I'm sure that 50 or 1,000 of that is not necessary, or could be pushed off to next year. For 300 grand of it, I actually see that these are good projects. I'm not separating them.
Well, again, I want to see business cases on some of these numbers as well. Yeah, you got them?
The 353, that includes stuff that we've already talked about.
Yeah, so it's,
Yeah.
So you're not actually looking at 353
so it's
right
about
now.
130,000 you can remove from that we've accounted for in water and sewer.
So the blues
Yeah.
and greens are already,
Blues and
we've
greens are
already
gone.
greened.
Blues and
Don't-
We've
greens
already
are gone.
passed,
Don't
so,
take those into consideration.
So-
Okay, well, I still want to talk about those.
Oh, no,
because-
but just in terms of the
Understood,
total
but
number for general
We've
fund.
just spoken about those and the other, I'm just,
Got you. Okay, that's good.
so in the, basically, we nodded already on that. There's not a lot left, because if you take it on the bottom of page 15, the drainage roads and drainage roads, which is, let's call it 155,000. The rest is actually kind of small in the world of the world here.
Well, no, there's some big ones. So can I just touch on some of the big ones?
Please.
What's the $15,000 fence replacement, Nick?
we have a lot of locations around the village that require fence replacements. So the fence the longest run of fence replacement is between Lions Bay Beach Park and the marina. It's fallen over.
Oh, the one dividing the parking lot from the
Correct.
beach, yeah.
Correct. So that one does need to be replaced. We have some of the security perimeter fencing around the yard that needs to be replaced. And the Lions Bay Beach Park has, as part of the playground risk assessment, it identified another section of fence that needed to be replaced. So all of those fencing replacements have been put into there. I'm more than happy to put forward a business case. It's 15 grand. I should put forward a business case.
15 grand sounds low for what you've just said.
It's based, well, see, here's the rub. It's based on chain link. You probably aren't going to want chain link
Along the beach?
the
No.
beach park.
I
So
can guarantee you that.
exactly. So that's why the notes say that the estimate. So it's a placeholder. We're going to need an actual estimate based on the final product determined.
What's WY?
Work shared.
Oh, works, yeah.
Yeah. So Lions Bay Beach Park and work shared.
Okay, so we're going to have to tighten up on that one.
So,
Is
so
this-
this is basically a placeholder. This is just to make sure we have some money allocated to move forward.
I mean, this may be part of our feel-good project for the beach, Ron. So you could steal from other council asks. Is this the time to start to formalize the relationship between the marina and the village?
We do have a formal agreement that was signed.
We do.
We do.
Just for everybody's edification. In fact, where the fence runs is a good 20 feet, I think, or more, 30 feet into marina property. And that was done in consideration of the marina being given access to the village's right to encroach on the CN right away to provide their new driveway, as I understand it back in the day. This is all 30 years ago, handwritten notes in the file. If we're okay, and the marina is okay with us putting a new fence there, then we need to understand what our options are in terms of, it's going to be climbable, the kids climb on it all the time,
And what
signage.
both the needs are, because it will have to actually fulfill both the Lions Bay Beach Park requirements and the requirements of the marina.
Well, I'm wondering myself if there isn't a, like, if that fence collapses and it is on marina property or village property, whichever, there's gonna be a liability attached to it. So from the marina's point of view, they're a shared participant in this fence. And so there's gotta be some sort of.
Currently on their land, in
Yeah,
fact.
that's right, it's currently on their land, therefore, the reality is, we should be talking to them, see what they're willing to kick into this process.
Yes.
Well, I
And
suspect
the marina has always been very happy to do things like that. They've been they've fixed portions of the fence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it our fence? Not theirs? Yeah, one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this
Well,
definitely doesn't preclude talking to them and discussing with them and everything like that.
are they an
We
additional
would not
named
make that
insurance?
decision in a vacuum.
I mean, it's, yeah, the ownership of the fence needs to be regularized. That's why I keep talking about the where the line is and stuff. Plus the insurance situation. I would assume that if I was the marina, I'd want to be an additional named insured on our policy in case the fence that is our fence on their property hurts somebody. Okay, so there's a lot of work to be done there. I suggest the number 15 is very, very optimistic. Okay, two down to the survey to establish public versus private realm.
One more comment on the number. I agree with you, Carl, that is a very optimistic number, but if the work is gonna be done by the village per se, I suggest that it may be more beneficial on a piece of fence that significant to actually contract it,
Absolutely.
because it's not gonna be worth the time that we would spend on it.
And again, I have a tendency to not actually put the lines in things, so my apologies.
I'm drawing them
But-
right now, so can we have lines next time, please? And top justified, not center justified.
Yeah, so that 15K, if you look all the way along the thing, it's basically a placeholder. I just wanted to make sure we had something to start this conversation more than anything.
That's good, and I understand, Pam, that we're going to see real numbers next meeting.
Yes, when we do some fine tuning, we can we can request business cases. I don't think they can all be done for the next meeting, but,
I mean,
yeah.
what's a business case?
But,
I don't mean a 5-pager.
yeah,
I mean
yeah.
a line. in some
Definitely a
cases.
fine tuning of the numbers for the ones that you want more information
In two,
on.
so that's in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the drone. Who likes the drone idea? I like the drone idea. $4,000 enough?
It's our best estimate. We would obviously have to go get some quotes and
Mhm.
some training and.
Thank you for giving me credit in writing. $35,000 for a survey. This is Nikki. Talk to her.
Okay, so, one of the main items that, the infrastructure master plan has spoken to the infrastructure committee about, in their updates, was the need to take back the public realm, to know where our roads begin and end and the allowances that are alongside the roads. So, for lack of a better word, let's call them just the boulevards. Because we have a lot of encroachments, we have a lot of areas where, the pins have been disguised long ago or had structures placed over them or foliage overtaking them, etc. In an effort to be able to properly plan for drainage for the village and or be able to easily get into the infrastructure that we have under the roads, we're going to need to have a plan. So this is the beginning of the plan to ascertain where those pins have been lost, where our road allowance, our boulevards begin and end, where the property lines are. There's a lot of sort of knock-on benefits to this. One of which will make it a lot easier for the tree committee, because we're not trying to figure out if trees are on private or public property. But as an initial argument for it, we still have 70 locations where we cannot find the water shut-off valves for homes. They're just missing, we cannot find them. And if we knew where the property pins were and had the ability to clear or at least start down that path of knowing where ours begins and ends, it would be a lot easier to try to locate those. If we want to have a proper drainage system in the village, we're going to need to have culverts and ditches, and in order to even begin to plan it properly, we're going to have to know where the property lines begin and end. We don't currently necessarily have that ability to slate it on the ground.
Yeah. So I mean, those are the salient points. The other one you haven't mentioned yet is parking. Where if we're going to start regularizing parking on the boulevard, whether you're allowed 2 wheels on, no wheels on, or whatever, we also need to know this. The problem is it's a very expensive project. Do I not recall having read somewhere recently that there is funding available for resurveys of legacy communities, Peter? Does that ring a bell?
Not immediately.
We would never not look for, like, we would always look for funding opportunities, grant opportunities.
I think there's specific
what have you,
funding, though.
But we still need to know what the cost would be before we can actually apply for the funding anyway.
Sure. The reason I say this is when I was looking at all that stuff about the millimeter accuracy pins for road creep, I saw on BC Survey something. There's funding, and it's not insignificant. So anyway, there's funding potentially available, but we may be in for as much as 35, and the full whack is $250,000.
It's a lot of money. So the premise for putting the 35 was to start. We need to start somewhere. I didn't think it was realistic to be able to allocate it all in one funding year. This is something that we're going to have to do over time because we're never going to be able to afford it otherwise.
Yeah.
So it made sense to allocate a portion and just start moving in the right direction.
Having gone through an experience this past weekend with the survey company coming out and trying to establish a line to another piece of property around us, it turned out they had to relocate 2 of our property pins. And when they did so, we were absolutely blown away as to where they were. They were way off of where we figured our property line was.
I had the same experience. Mine were out by 3 meters in
And so if we're shocked, because I got a pretty level head on my shoulders about where things are, and I was totally blown away. I was dead wrong.
Turns out that piece of rebar that somebody put in there 20 years ago, that ain't the survey pen,
That's right, yeah.
which is,
Yeah.
yeah.
I won't talk about that, but that's right.
Especially as we
yeah.
want to, build a more resilient community infrastructure-wise, we need to know where.
Okay, I think we get it. I'm not going to call the question on that one yet. So the big one is this drainage and roads problem. 15K for the plan and 140,000 for the digging. I had mistakenly thought this was reinstituting the culvert that goes down the easement between 340 and 330 Ocean View into Rundle Creek, but it is not.
No, it is not. That would be a separate one that is likely also of critical importance. These are my best guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. We obviously will need to get the infrastructure master plan, look at all the projects, make sure that we haven't missed anything. But we have a lot of infrastructure to catch up on. And I didn't think it was very realistic to have more than one major project in this year. It doesn't matter really how many come out of that, the IMP, we need to choose one at most, because there's no point allocating funding if we can't get the work done. And so.
Well, that's been my bugbear for some time, is that
Yeah.
we earmark
So-
funds and we don't use them.
So I've tried to be very cognizant of that. We definitely need to make sure that the projects are, in front of council, and so that both staff and council can deliberate on them. But we're either looking at it in 2016 or 2017. You'll see my notes, the 5-year plan implications on the side. This project was. There was a fair bit of rationale for why this project made sense to put forward in 2016.
Well, it sort of points to where the $35,000 survey work could be done as well at the same time. Because I assume that we're going to be establishing and following best practice out of the IMP on how we're going to handle drainage. So whether it's a culvert, a ditch, gutters with grates, all this kind of stuff.
Correct.
Will this be
Will this be highlighted in the IMP as well?
No, I was more going to say, will this be a project that will be a permanent project, starting as we mean to go on? So we'll finally get gutters with the sidewalk that you want, the permeable sidewalk rather than a concrete sidewalk, or allowance for it in the future. So this will be the start of the recommendations coming out of the IMP.
This will be the start of the recommendations coming out of the IMP, correct?
If we don't do this, will we continue to have barriers midway down Ocean View for the next year?
Yes. Absolutely we will. Because we need the money to be able to fix it properly, as opposed to put a Band-Aid on it that may or may not fail. And that failure point is not the entire impacted failure section. That's just a point. It actually goes well above that, and there's no point in not fixing it properly.
Yeah. Okay, what's the extra $15,000 over the page?
So there's a number of, design, like survey, engineering, and design for specific projects that are going to come out of, that are going to shake out of the IMP. And so I'm allocating funding based on, I know that we're going to have to design and engineer solutions for some projects that are going to shake out of the IMP. So what I've done is I've tried to break it down, because we can get the survey done prior to actually letting out the contract. In fact, that would make the most sense. Plus, it also gives us the opportunity to have more shovel-ready projects in case funding comes up. So if we spend the 15K before we try to package it together as a whole unit, we may have some opportunities that could come up, that could arise from that would give the project a shovel-ready status.
Yeah, so I'll just interject. Let us not lose sight of the fact that the new federal government is going to double, triple, quadruple, severely increase infrastructure spending. The rules will be similar to what we know now, and that is you have to have shovel-ready plans. It may be a highly strategic move for us to start spending some money on having some shovel-ready plans, so that when the funding does come down the pike, it may be 2/3 funding, it may be 1/3 provincial, 1/3 federal, it may be half funding, we don't know. But without a plan, we don't get a piece of it, as we've discovered in the last little go-around, where we got a minuscule award. Okay, we got something, but... So, I mean, it may yet be that we need to make a strategic decision, this budget, whether to spend additional funds on planning.
And the other advantage of those is they will feed into the debt application process, where you have to put forward a business case, and when you have this backup as well, it helps here to get the approval of your business case for the debt.
And thank you for reminding me. So, and then the other side of this coin, it's now a three-sided coin, is that some of this can be funded by debt. That
Will have to be funded by debt.
Will have to be funded by
No
debt.
option there.
There's a parcel tax. There's parcel tax, right? Or depending. Okay, or no, or property. Okay, so got it. Thanks. Anything else for anybody? The wastewater treatment plant upgrade for 21, that has to be done this year.
That's, actually, that's one of those ones that we talked about, where it's included in the rates. I would
It's
say
a
those are
21 grand for
safety
safety.
improvements. They're
That's just
safety
a safety
improvements, they should have been done years ago.
Lions Bay Beach Park for 13,000. That is not washroom refurbishment, but that is sort of what I asked for in terms of stair tread replacement.
So, yeah, there's, some minor, well, the boat space, the
The
kayak
kayak parking, yeah.
parking
Yeah.
needs some work. The wood entrance is of concern to us, where you first go in and it is looking a little iffy, and we would much rather proactively deal with that than have to reactively deal with that. And then there's the stair replacement that we've talked about before, and some guardrails, and which came up out of the risk assessment that, one of those acronyms came up with. So it sort of encapsulates the all of those items.
Okay, I think we get it. So, I mean, the issue is, again, I just notice the notes. The $13,000 number in this case, for example, doesn't include replacement.
No.
And it needs to. Otherwise, we'll end up with another big green elephant sitting in the middle of the village where we need to budget extra money for the replacement thereof. So I would suggest these numbers are not yet...
Correct, so on the notes, you'll see that it says, requires a detailed cost estimate for options chosen. Currently does not include replacement of the wooden entrance, the bench, or any playground equipment.
So just to talk from wearing the political hat, we take that beach entrance away and don't replace it. You'll hear the screams for miles.
Well, here's another point on that same subject. Where are we going to deal with or try to attempt to deal with the beach access points along Lions Bay Avenue, where they were actually cleared off by Douglas Miller's during Douglas Miller's times, and all of a sudden they've just been let to go, and now they've all fallen apart. The stairs have fallen apart. They've collapsed. Whatever the case is, people have parked their cars on them, so people can't get in there. Are we dealing with that? That there's another item that's very similar to that, and I think it's part of public access to the beach.
It's more a policy issue, I think, rather than a staff expenditure recommendation. But yeah, we probably should touch on that, just to advise the rest of council. When the subdivision was originally done, if we had a map, I'd point to it. But it's coming. The map's almost here. There were little laneways left, about every 10 parcels, to provide access to the esplanade, which we're going to hear. Go on.
We do have stairs associated with 2 of those access points, and we did spend money and time last year unearthing those and creating a safer stair access to 2 of those points.
Okay, so it's been brought to my attention a couple of times by residents, and I keep saying the same thing, like it's the council's, aware of it, but,
Yeah.
Well, I would like to bring that to council at some point in the future. Do we want to maintain that access, or do we not? That's
We take
separate.
our cue from that.
Yeah.
of course, yeah.
Absolutely.
Only, this is a discussion.
Okay, so anything else on these are the public work asks, needs, have to haves. Nikki, it's all very well. I'm afraid I would say that you're a bit light in some of your estimates. So we're really
And
gonna,
that's why if I don't actually know the numbers, I've just got placeholder, either waiting for estimate or need to get estimates. I think, going back to what Pam was saying before, if council around the table wasn't interested in any of those, it wouldn't be time well spent for me to have gone and tried to get the numbers exact at this point. This is the time when I need direction. It's like, yes, actually this is important. I'll go back and get detailed cost estimates. I can get quotes. There's,
I think you've already been very prudent in what you've put forward, so I don't think there's much argument on any of this stuff.
and I'm just sort of trying to be very cognizant of the fact that we don't have a lot of money. We need to be as proactive as possible with as little money as possible. So the big ticket items, try to.
Ron?
I concur, I think we need to move on. This has got a green light for me for the next round. And ultimately, council's gonna have to wrestle with a number. And it's not department concentric, it's gonna be the number.
Yeah, that's correct. Unfortunately, I think the number is going to be a little higher than we see here today. It's a big number, but that is what we're in the business of doing, obviously. What I do like is this start of executing on the master plan. It's a big number here, but at least it includes some of that.
Nikki, I was just wondering, so would you say that all of these are you would think are must do for this year?
I was very cognizant of attempting to not put anything in that I didn't feel was justifiable.
Yeah, do we need a $4,000 drone? Well, no, we can do without it. But if we have to start paying for helicopter rides to go and inspect the thing, and right now, what was our last non-inspect window? It was at least 2 weeks. We couldn't go up there and look. We didn't have a clue. As it turns out, because of configuration changes that was spent money on last summer, it was almost seamless to the village. It wasn't for all intents but seamless.
Carl, this section's got a green light. Let's go.
Everybody good with that?
Absolutely.
Can I wear my black hat again?
Yeah, do it.
Love the general government as I do, and I know we all embrace general government. However, I think of where, in terms of the hard asks from the Works Department, my piece was, regrettably, was on taking out the 4 biggest expense items, which is the asset appraisal for the management plan, the egress for the BC ambulance, unfortunately Fred, the strategic review, and the generator. And to me, those would be, if council has a view of it, it would be the next year's piece, because basically, other than getting some ballast, the admin's getting zip.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm with you there.
I just can't get around it. Unfortunately, everything's 5 digits.
Tablets for council agendas, I'd come out as well, $3,000. Supply your own tablets. The second egress for BC ambulance, is that required?
That, I have to get more information on that, so I can come back with, we're just sort of trying to throw everything out there, and I will come back with a business
We may
case
have no
on that.
choice on that one.
That one might be a work safe.
Yeah.
What's that?
That one might be a work safe issue. It's
Yeah.
Yeah,
only one-
it sounds like it may be.
Yeah, I don't think,
It is.
and because I'll get the business case, so we'll get an
So
exact number.
my one issue is the generator for the hall. We have the biggest generator known to
Tell me, I had
man.
the biggest
Not for the
honking.
wall.
It's not the hall.
It's just for the clap.
No,
we don't
it's
have-
been wired.
No, it's not.
That's how it was justified, and I know that from Ruth Simons.
We're not allowed to use the generator at the clap for this building as well.
That's, last council was told that.
Yeah, that's true, so we don't actually have a generator.
Not allowed by who?
I
We
think it
can't
says
electrically tie the 2 buildings together,
There you go.
period.
They're
You're not
electrically tied together now.
allowed. No.
Yeah,
No,
The
lights are on.
We were talking about the
the
clap
clap
building.
building,
Oh,
separate
good.
building, separate building, separate, everything's separate. We can't tie them, both buildings together electrically, so that generator only provides for the clap. We don't currently have a generator for the hall. We have a very, very tiny.
No,
diesel
that's nothing.
generator.
That'll run the
Yeah,
Christmas
yeah.
lights if you're lucky.
That'll keep you
Why
guys
we put
cold.
it-
Yeah.
That has not been my understanding to justify the $380,000 spent by somebody, not by us, on the generator. I'd like to get a business case on that one. My understanding is that generator was supposed to be for the municipal, because the EOC used to be in here.
Okay.
Yes,
The
please?
generator was approximately 75,000, of which we received a JET grant for some of it, and I think the initial idea when we went to do it was that we would like to have a generator for both buildings. We then found out that you actually cannot tie the 2 buildings in electrically, so we still went ahead with the JET grant, with the generator for the flat building, because that is the EOC. we still don't have a generator in this building. But it was about 75,000, I think.
Okay, maybe I got
55.
only half the story. But that generator, just in case you haven't seen it, that generator is the size of a VW bus.
Mhm.
It's
Yep.
it's big.
Yep.
That would run the village for a little while. Okay. No on that one too.
May I suggest we move on then unless there's a show of
Does that give you enough, Pam? to
Yeah,
go on?
we'll come back with the requested business cases, and yeah.
Which, if I may continue to wear my black hat,
I know that you like to get things moving, but I don't want to rush this artificially.
I
So
know, because we're going to see.
we're going
all
to
that.
discuss it thoroughly because this is our only time.
Well, no,
which-
it'll be, sorry to interrupt, but it will be discussed again at the.
I understand, but
yeah.
if there's stuff that must come out at this point of the game, I want it out now rather than rushing over it.
This last part, which is truly the painful part, which is 18 and 30, which is the council's asks. To put the end before we do the beginning, from the financial planning, again, it's not about the projects, it's ultimately about the number. And I can see that if we kind of come close to the bare bones on the fire ask, we've come to what we think is a case for public works, and we've skinnied the general government down. That's a pretty good list that's, the council asks, and considering we all were here and nodding on it, to me, I'm gonna go in a different direction here. I think that, to me, if I look at the must-haves versus, going through the number here, I think that where we're going to be forced on the whole numbers is on the council asks. This is where the the death toll is gonna be the highest, because it's a lot of, some important, some nice to haves. So, to me, I'm not gonna pick out the nice to haves here, because I was fine with all of it, but I can see that the number's just not gonna work. But I would make a strong plug for the OCP work that's being done, because being this part of our term, if we don't get on with it now, it's gonna be a lame duck at the end of the year, end of the term. I also, this is for my piece here, is that the next biggest items in combination are either the beach park or the signage relative to the parking committee recommendations. And I think council needs to make some calls on this without kind of, picking out, $2,000 or $5,000 here and there,
The other one is the contingency for the legal fees.
which is an operational piece, so
Yeah.
that won't be here.
There's a small amount of double counting here that we could pull out.
Well, like the drone is in here twice
Yeah,
and stuff like
and the
that.
tree cutting, I
And,
think, is-
Yeah, so,
but-
but I mean, in the bigger picture, Carl, it's a pretty substantive $183,000 list. I think if all of us wanted to put our hands up and say, which do we really like, and which would the residents like, we get 10 out of 10 for this one, but we're in our financial hat. I'm
Just
sure-
remind us what the emergency plan implementation is, Fred? $10,000.
I was kind of puzzled by the way it was put down like that. I thought we had 20 is what I had asked for,
I had in my notes that it had been tweaked down to 10. I could be wrong. And then we had said emergency plan implementation, just because we had that emergency plan done, and we need to go through it. And there'll be things in there that are recommended to be implemented. So that was the money so that we could actually follow through on the emergency plan
oh,
we
okay.
paid for this year, but I could have misunderstood.
Yeah, my original ask was for evacuation planning, but, I don't know.
Go, Peter.
So, I have the notes from that meeting, on evacuation planning. The original number was 20, got cut down to 10. And then at the bottom of the list, there's a separate line item for emergency planning, EOC training, etc., was 5,000, and that was left in to investigate options.
Right.
Yeah, we have multiple asks for plans across the board. Fire services plan, OCP, emergency plan, maybe others, parking plan. I guess we can't have all of them. Just to put in a plug for the parking plan, and the 17 is a wild ass guess for signage. Don't really know what's involved. I would suggest that with implementation of the parking plan as we think it's going to transpire, it'll take some of the pressure off the beach. because we're gonna limit to a not unreasonable number the amount of visitor parking.
I would have a table pounding on a parking plan, and we can't go to committee work expecting good work to be done. It will be done, and then we don't implement and execute in time for the current year. Oh, and what message?
Yeah, well put.
What message is that?
Yeah, so I mean, that, the discretionary item here that's not time critical is the beach renovation.
Well, again, Carl, I mean, I'm looking at the number, not the projects, and I'm thinking $183,000, we're probably gonna have to lop 100 grand off this
Mhm.
somewhere.
Mhm.
And that's kind of where I'm at with this. So I'm less about where it is, but council needs to say, okay, I'm not happy, but I'm holding my nose here.
Okay, so should we just run through them one by one and say loud yes, loud no, nods? How do we want to do this? We have to give some guidance to Pam so that she knows what to...
Let me pick the top 5 and see where we stand on that, because the rest is kind of pennies in the scheme of things.
Yeah, well, I mean, some people's top,
Well,
yeah.
sorry, dollar amount, sorry. Because I mean, either if you are in the OCP at 65 grand this year versus deferred, that's a big swing.
Yes. Pam, what is council's discretionary budget that's in the general fund? Is it 15,000 a year?
I'm not sure if it's quite that high. I don't know offhand.
Because I mean, some of these things like a poster printer and thermostat in council chambers, if there's wiggle room in this discretionary budget, which I hear tell of, but I still don't know the number
Yeah,
of.
I can
Pam,
look
don't
at
ask
that.
Lily, she's still in it.
She may know off the top of her head.
But even if it was
I
10,
mean,
let's say 10,
The thing is,
Even if it
we
was 5.
budgeted
fine.
based on what you actually spent last year, and that's, we consider these supplementals. That's not something that would normally be included in that budget, so I'm hesitant to think that there would be room in there for it.
But I think there is a discretionary budget. Right? There's a number. Just like there's a website number that we don't know what it is.
The council does have their own expenses other than salary, but I'm saying it's small, and I based the budget on what you actually spent last year. So unless you were willing to cut some of just what you actually spent.
Well, so
I'm
what
not
I
sure
would
there would be
suggest
room.
is maybe some of these these little onesie twosies, we budget instead $5,000 council discretionary, and if it can fit in there, great. If it can't, not. But okay, so let's run through them quickly. Poster printer and cartridges. This is I'm not going. If you don't remember what it was for and how it talks to our council priorities, now's not the time to reiterate. I'm a very firm yes on that one.
Are you using your yes vote on this one?
I don't think there's a vote. I want to hear our opinions. If
Well-
nobody else thinks it's a good idea, and I notice the notice board request is gone. I think we said no on that one.
No,
No,
it's
it's
there.
here.
Number
It's here.
3?
Increased
Oh, there it is.
services for the...
It's there.
Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so we'll say nothing on that one further. Central Beach, no.
Increased garbage service.
I'm a no on this. I think it's too much. It's
Okay.
painful for no. I think somewhere in here there's probably this will go through all of the beach stuff, with the exception of the garbage pickup and cleanup. I think
that had got
That's a
removed.
service level
That's a
increase that
service
we have not yet
which
seen,
we
right?
haven't seen yet, but I would like to see cleanup in the washroom on a regular basis
Yeah,
for
yeah.
maintenance, and also clearly as you said, we're dealing with people from Coquitlam that come to our beach and leave their bags of garbage there. We need garbage takeaway.
Yep.
Can we say no to this, but then put in,
No,
because I know there was
We're throwing the
a,
baby out here, Helen.
no, but the residents were gonna do it, so maybe we give them more support to do it from their end.
So I was going to just suggest that maybe we force that, we
This is-
resurrect that project and make it happen.
This is a feel-good project for a lot of residents in the village.
I couldn't
That
agree
invite
more.
people out in the summertime to come to the beach or do whatever the case they do with them. And I think I think that's silly to cut that out myself. I think it's an important thing to a lot of people in the village.
One of our jewels, we know that.
And it's been dilapidated for so long.
Well, until-
that's only 10 grand, which is, I mean, there's, the second item is 10 grand, but if you go down, there's another 20, so that's 30. And then we were going to do another.
And some of this remediation work is already in the public works budget. I'll just remind you, if you look,
So should we separate out the ones that are duplicated? Because that
Well, the
might be-
drone is out, let's take the drone out, that's one.
That's already in somewhere else, yeah.
That's already in
So
somewhere
there's
else.
four
Yeah, and I
grand.
think this Central Beach remediation, that was in Nikki's.
I'll
wasn't
just
it?
remind you, this one says Lions Bay Beach Park, boat space refurbishment, removal of wood entrance and wood bench, stair replacement, guardrails. As far as I'm concerned, that's close enough. Although I will say that there's stone steps or brick steps going down to the beach that are close to dangerous now. The final step's 24 inches. But okay, that's Public Works can put sand there. So I'm happy with taking out the, other than washrooms, $10,000.
What are you saying about the steps? I'm sorry, I missed that.
The steps that go down to the sand are 24 inches or at least 2 feet off the sand right now.
Okay, so that's illegal.
They've been scoured, yeah.
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 A
That
lot
has
of
to
them
be
are
fixed.
breaking
There's no
away.
ifs, ands, or buts. That has to be
Yeah.
fixed.
Yeah, well, I think somebody's moved the log in the way right now. It rolls a bit and it's kind of slippery. Okay, let's leave these small ones. Public Works radio equipment. This was new ecom radios. Leave that to staff. Mics, inspection drone, community center sound system. Yes.
For $500, I'm not talking
No,
about.
2,000.
No,
No,
2,000.
2,000, it's,
There's added implications to that. We could maybe keep it on, but talk about it at the next meeting, just in terms of our policy now. If someone rents a sound system, Public Works has to set it up. And we need to talk about that, if that's the best use of our Public Works time, but
Mm.
someone has to set it up, so.
Well, maybe we can get a more
there's,
robust, less configurable, easier, harder to break one. But okay, let's leave that one for now. Central Beach washroom. It's a hard one. Let's leave it for now. Let's not do anything. 17.5 parking. Yes.
yes.
Emergency plan implementation. Somewhere between 10 and 20.
You know, I think we could probably work our way around this if staff is willing. We could, one suggestion I was having is, we can use templates from, that are readily available, and maybe you and I could sit down with
Just
staff.
do it administratively. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we could work it that way.
I'm happy to do that. More than happy, because we actually get more customized product. In
Yeah.
I'm taking it out then.
Okay, out. Arborists. This, I believe, is going to be part of the Public Works thing anyway.
Yeah, I think it has it in her budget.
I noted that I had asked, I had gotten a quote for all of the work that needs to be done, because before, the assessment didn't actually tell us how much it would cost.
Mm.
I threw in my best guess, you've thrown in, somebody's thrown in a best guess. We'll actually know what the number is tomorrow.
Okay, that comes out for now because it's
It's already been.
dealt with elsewhere. OCP, that's a yes on mine. I think we can get away with less than 65. I think we can do better by doing some of the work ourselves, finding the right vendor. Peter, you know more about this than anybody, and making sure that they start their billable work fully briefed, which means that they need a very good information gathering phase, gathering council's preferences, where we think, so that they are not reinventing any wheels. Can we get away for anything less than 65? Because, as you know, I would like the OCP to now include a landscape architecture plan. You know, do we really still want this clump of bushes in front of the fire hall or not? Do we want to do something with our village entrance that looks like back of a Los Angeles freeway? So I would suggest we need a landscape part of it, and then there's also land use, which is not really part of a normal OCP.
Well, neither is a landscape architecture plan.
Exactly. So I mean, so you know,
OCP's an OCP, and what you're paying for mostly is the planner's time and the public consultation sessions and the pulling together of all the bits and pieces and time spent in order to create the plan and then go to the public with it. So
65. That's about right.
that'd be what I'm comfortable with, but
Carl, I think that's a number you should defend if it comes down fine.
When it comes to it, yeah. I mean, I'll just remind us all, when we redid the regional context statement, you remember we got a quote of $15,000 to do the RCS, which we then wrote internally and cost us $500. So there's many ways to skin a cat, but I think we need to leave the 65. Tree cut recommendations, that's been taken care of somewhere else. Professional fees, I think that's contingency, so
We'll look at that, we currently have money in reserves for that, so
Yes.
staff will look at that to see if we need
I
any
was
extra.
just going to say, that's, I think, a draw
Yeah.
on reserves, I think. So do we, actually
Yeah.
budget it? No, it's a draw on reserve.
Well, no, I think my indication was that you wanted to put more into the reserves, so I think we need to research to see if that's necessary, and I'm not sure it is.
Update website, alternative to municipal update 10,000.
Yeah, I can remove that, find some other way.
I agree. I think because we're already getting a website change, Heidi's going to give us a brief any day now.
But But it was more to resurrect the,
Yeah, the old
As a
newsletter,
funding thing,
yeah.
yeah,
what's it called?
yeah,
Yeah.
lionsbay.net,
.net.
yeah. I think that has to come out this year, this go around. Everybody good on that?
Sorry, I thought that this money was towards, moving towards the revamped website rather than what we have. There's something that's been started and we need to visit it and decide what to do with it and bring a new website, I thought was what the discussion was.
Yeah, I think that, tell us.
I think we have money in our budget to cover the.
Yes, we
the
do.
revamping
It was
of
to
our-
populate the
understanding
data,
was-
as I remember.
Yeah.
It was, and some redesign. This was, Councillor Woodson was looking for lionsbay.net, so this was a different item.
It was a
Yes.
subsidy to
Yes.
just like we used to do. We used to
Yes.
subsidize lionsbay.net to
Yes,
the tune of 12,000.
That was my understanding what that money was for.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, we do need a new website. Boy, do we ever. But I think it's within, I mean, I'm happy to allocate some, but I don't think it needs to be 10
No.
to do the internal website. Communication policy and staff training? No. That's going to have to be done on internally. Volunteer appreciation event 2000 program? I think we need to do that on a self-funded basis, whether it's a shrimp bake or a BC Day or
That's
Canada.
actually sorry.
Go on.
That's something that you were talking about, looking to the mayor's and council's money. That's actually something, a reduced amount could come from mayor and council because you have council-sponsored events in there. So you could knock the price down and still have the event, but pay for it with
Okay,
your
so
own
I
money.
would suggest the next one fit into some sort of discretionary budget allowance and the emergency planning EOC.
Yeah, I think we've been trying for so long to try to get the EOC up and running, and training is the biggest issue. $5,000 could be a high number, but it'd be nice to have a placeholder.
I mean, at some point we're going to have to grow up, and that's one of the prices of growing up. I agree. Are we going to open the EOC this year? No, until we do. So, yeah, fine. Okay, so has given you enough to go on there, Pam?
Yes.
What
that helps.
can I rather propose that some of these onesies, twosies, microphones, thermostats. I didn't ask for a big, higher 65-inch diagonal TV, 880 at Costco mounted for council. Can we do a $4,000 council discretionary budget for these kinds of priority items,
Yeah, I can present it.
and then get rid of these little onesie twosies?
We
so
still
that-
need to ask, but we can lump it together.
Yeah, but we
saying-
come up with a much easier to approve process rather than putting it as a $250 microphone as a line item in the budget.
Okay.
Okay, everybody happy? Okay, what do we have left here?
Just, Carl, can I, 30 seconds for some mathematics?
Yep, go ahead.
I've used Pamela's prior budget based on a 5% general tax increase. And I've just tabbed up the projects that we've approved for the fire, theoretically approved. The fire reduced down to 54,000, Public Works holding at 350, admin at 18, and will not talk about council for the second here. But just in terms of reality, the asks with are $422,000. And if we use Pam's 5% increase, the free cash flow, if we can call it that, is 320. If we were to go another 10 points on the general tax increase, all of that would be covered. So
Another 10 points over Pam's 4.
15 is
15
the
over
number.
Pam's 5.
Yeah, and that's with, I'm just kind of putting some relativity to the numbers that we're talking about here. Yes, Pete?
Sorry, did you say 350 on the Public Works? Because some of that was already included in the other budget.
Yeah,
So I think it was
so
a
there's
net
some
of-
play here. What I'm
net of
saying is
200,
15 will get,
In round numbers, we're looking at 15 if we want to
15
fund
is,
this.
I mean, let's not rose-colored glasses here. 15 is the number to get close to what we, certainly for the fire, certainly for admin, certainly for Public Works, and at least half of the council list.
And this is exactly the type of format I would propose for the next meeting, is that I would fine tune this and then we can start looking at different scenarios for the funding and the
Now,
tax
you did
rate.
present the budget in mid-December, whenever it was.
I've got it right here.
With a 5% increase gave us how much discretionary funds?
320.
320 was the number I had in
Yeah.
my head.
Yeah, those numbers will be more fine-tuned because
But-
we've got actual numbers in, but I will update that budget, get the new number, and then do like Councillor Councillor McLaughlin has done, do some scenarios
Yeah,
with
because
what's
I
left.
think you probably weren't looking at such a high water increase. You were thinking that we're going to have to come up with water funding from the general fund as well. So, yeah,
That was just the
That's the
general fund,
range.
yeah.
we're looking at a range somewhere between 10 and 15%.
10, you won't accomplish any of council's.
I think there's a
Well-
lot of double counting in here and stuff that, but I'd be
Okay,
interested
but
to
once
know
you
the
clean it
tighten.
up, I think if you hold the 15 in your mind, and then you work back.
How does that grab
That's the
everybody?
painful math, I'm afraid.
Yeah. How does that grab you?
Painful.
It's not grabbing me at all.
Yeah, not grabbing me at all either.
Because last year we went through this and we said it was, I don't know. We had to do it because of the funding that
Well,
whatever.
Helen, I monopolized the 3 minutes here, just so that in 2 weeks from now, we're not surprised when this comes back and it looks like 15.
Yeah, rather have the shock now rather than later. I agree. Yeah, we're not going to have that debate now.
No, it's not a debate, I'm just doing the math.
So, we've also, this is just a side point, since this is a discussion, we've also seen tax increases due to property values this year. So, where does that show up?
What?
Well, it shouldn't, the increased
sure
property
won't.
No, it
values
won't,
is
but-
just how, your share of the pie, but it's just
Yeah.
our budget that determines what the increase is.
Okay, so all I'm saying is revenue streams will change slightly.
They shouldn't.
No, it'll
Like
be
I say,
exactly like this.
It's whatever we
Yeah.
decide,
We've
yeah.
already put the,
The
we've already
values
put
that you're
the, we've already
exactly
budgeted
like
the
that.
increase, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Never
Yeah.
mind. I was just thinking.
Although I will point out, and okay, so I will go through my points now. If I will beg your indulgence because I think it's important. I will point out now. One of my points was that my anecdotal belief that all of our tax increase last year was absorbed by reassessments. It redivvied up the pie such that your average taxpayer, in fact, saw a decrease in tax, as did I, for example, even though my assessment went up $100,000. I guess it went up less than other people's, so I actually paid less tax last year than the year before, even though taxes went up 12% overall. So I did ask for that report, and we'll get to it in a sec. Okay, so let's just whip through these as quickly as possible. I hope that everybody had read them when I sent them around January 8th.
No, wait, before we move forward, would you do a scenario where we take a big chunk of money out of reserve and not increase by 10 or 15%?
I don't even have to do that scenario. I mean, you'll be able to see what a tax is, but I can say as CFO, I would never recommend that because I feel your reserves are
Are we already at?
already at below my comfort level.
I think
So
I am.
think,
I put it in here.
yeah.
I need a recommendation on replenishment.
Yeah.
I think we are below prudence today.
Yeah, what is there a
Well, I
number?
don't know. I don't know what the number is. I
There
hope
isn't.
somebody knows the number.
No,
There
but
isn't
is
a
there a
magic number. It's
that municipalities should always have?
Well,
There's
that's
no
your
s-
debt
no, there
question.
Yeah, there's no standard?
No.
at all, actually.
It's what we think is prudent. And so we'll be
Yeah,
looking for
but
recommendations.
that is a good point. I mean, that is a discussion. Now that, that's sort of what we're progressing to with each committee of the whole, we'll fine tune, and then we get into those discussions about what council's comfortable in terms of.
And I think it's
And
fair
then I
to
will
say
have,
that this council wants to live within its means. We will raise the money that we intend to spend, and we will, in fact, we will be quite responsible and start replenishing reserves. So Ron's proposed, and we didn't really talk about it, to put the $53,000 gas tax into reserve. You know, in this kind of budget year, when we have to spend as much money we have to spend to fix the 200 meters of culvert that's collapsed through inattention in previous years, and put 53 into savings. Boy, that's a brave decision, as they used to say in Yes Minister.
because right now, it's just in revenue. It's not coming out, and
You know
that's
what
why
I'm
I
talking
still
about?
take it.
Both of us are.
Okay, so let's work through these. What about the $60,000 to $80,000 overrun on the intake repair from last year's budget?
So what are you looking at? Is it-
Page 19.
Oh,
Page
we've
19.
jumped to the next report, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, we've gone to the mayor's report. And
First bullet point. So we overran on the budget. How are we going to recover that?
that is something where I'll hopefully have an answer for the next meeting. I have to zero in the year-end results to see when the dust settles. We might have been favorable in other areas to see what our actual net bottom line is. And I'm hoping to have a preliminary, very preliminary run, recognizing a lot of invoices still have to come in for the next meeting. So I totally understand what you're asking on that, and it is on my radar for anything that we went over budget on, to see
Yeah, so I mean, as
how
I
we
don't need
absorb
to
it.
tell you, we're not going to rob Peter to pay Paul. So
Yeah.
if we overran on one thing, we're going to report that's an overrun, and if
Right.
we underran on other
Right.
things, that's an underrun. We're not going to start massaging numbers,
Mhm.
but it may yet be, depending on what the finals come out as, that we have to fund some portion of 80,000. What was the number again, Pam? 60, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, we're going to have to fund some portion of $60,000 this year
Mhm.
because we overran last year because it was an unforeseen. We needed to rock bolt things.
Yeah, it's
I
not so
don't like
much
your
funding it
report.
this year is,
I don't like it either.
Phone
it's,
system, the same thing. We
no,
drew on
went to
reserves,
council
right?
on that. Yeah, I'll have to look into it. I don't think we did, but in the fire alarm, we didn't go over budget. That was just, we had already rebudgeted the money. So,
Okay, these are pulled off the top of my head.
Yeah.
There were council
So-
resolutions on budget changes.
yes.
They needed to be funded one way or the other.
So just for expediency, just because I'm cognizant of the time, I totally understand what you're getting with this, and I am going to, for the next meeting, have an estimate of what our year-end surplus deficit is. I'm rolling it into the reserve analysis that I'll bring to the,
I'm not going to
meeting.
touch on all of these. I'll get to you next, Nick. We budgeted $10,000 in income from infrastructure planning grant. It didn't happen.
Yep.
So that's definitely going to have to be. It's going to have to come out in the wash.
well,
Yeah, Nick?
it doesn't come in the wash so much as I will have forecasted what our bottom line is, and then that then feeds into reserves, and then it will update the reserve balances, so we know how much we have in reserves when we go on, and then take into account the things we have to rebudget. But none of these need to be rebudgeted because we've already spent it. So it only has an impact on the bottom line.
Unless we
at
choose
the
to
end of
fund
the
it, replenish the funds from this year.
Mhm.
I mean,
That's-
the overwhelming piece here, Carl, is what was a skinny reserve balance is skinnier, if not too skinny.
What were you going to say, Nick?
Just a quick thing on the 60 to 80K overrun. We're still talking to DFA to figure out where the
What they're gonna
balance
pay
is.
for?
So,
Yeah.
because it's the final thing, given with all the changes, et cetera. So with the exception of the anchor bolts, which is a whole different thing, but the remainder of that may still, it still fell into what we had originally given to PEP with regard to
Yeah.
a contingency, because we knew that you can only do so much with what you're dealing with out there. So
Yeah.
there was only the contingency portion of things. DFA doesn't actually allocate funds based on contingency. They take them, it's done in a separate allocation. So what we are doing now is we put forward the rationale for why we needed to use the contingency that we originally had indicated to them it would probably take. They've asked us to give them a different type of explanation, because the one that we gave them, they felt was, it was directed towards engineers, and they wanted just a lay person's explanation. So I will have that back to them this week. That just basically says in less complicated format,
Yeah.
why the overrun is. So DFA will play a role in the first bullet point as well.
Yeah, I mean, the point is we are not going to have complete information on which to make a final budget decision if we choose to replenish reserves that have been drawn down too low as a result of all of this stuff. That's always the case. That's why you have a bit of a buffer in your reserves. Okay, so moving on to point 2, I don't think there's anything, although do we want to tentatively account for revenue?
No.
Never.
We can't, no, absolutely not.
What about loan proceeds?
Nope, because there wouldn't be revenue until, sorry. It's your CFO being very strident. Yeah, no, that would go, but it would go into the budget in 2017. I mean, we can't get funding.
No, my
for
only point would be if we
2016.
had raised it in 2016.
Yes, if our intent was to go for funding, and then we had the offsetting capital, we would budget it for it. We show as revenue our debt proceeds that we were hoping to get, and then we would show all the capital projects that we would be funding from that. That would be part of a budget process in a year that we were getting debt
And
funding.
we're not going to do that this year.
We can't, as I think we previously discussed,
We're only going for the September
We,
intake, application intake, and that would only fund in.
April, so spring of,
Spring.
April, spring of 2017.
Okay, that was easy. Fine. Pam, I know that you're on top of all of these questions, at least I hope so, so I'm not going to I'm not going to go through any of them.
Well, what
in
I'll
any-
do is I'll go through this and then it'll be part of the next council
Yeah.
meeting in terms of
I think
what's
that's right.
applicable and.
Let me just, point 4, bullet 4. I don't know if it's applicable to Lions Bay, but the GVRD reports that their debt service is 20% of its budget. In other words, interest is 20% of their budget. You know, is a regional district the same as a municipality? Well, they raise taxes the same way based on property values, yes.
They're using a 7-year amortization on their debt.
And they're being very conservative on their amortization, yes. Very conservative.
I think our approach would be just what's the maximum debt we qualify for and what council can tolerate in terms of what we'd have to tax to pay for it. I
Yeah.
think that is more dictates how much debt we go for.
Okay, the next few points are to do with accountability. I want to know that the money that we spent on the maze modules was money well spent. Now, I see we didn't get any requests for maze modules this year, so it may be somewhat academic. You're going to respond to all of these points?
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize, yes,
No, I'm not now, but
yeah, for the
I'm
next
just
meeting, yeah.
making sure that
So
I
I can-
understand. The reserve balances, Helen, this somewhat answers, addresses your question, is what's prudent? Well, some work was done by the Finance Committee on what's prudent, and we would benchmark ourselves against other municipalities. Some municipalities, Pam will tell us West Band, doesn't use debt at all. No debt. Everything's funded out of reserve. Others are right up to their limit. So we want to know where we should be. KPIs. Water bills. Can we
Yes.
implement rebates in time? It's just a credit. It's like an early payment discount. Why? A, for water conservation reasons. B, also to start getting a real understanding of what a future real-world conservation regime wastewater treatment flows would be for the whole village.
Are we funding this rebate, or is it a,
It would just be a reduction in revenue.
so there
Just,
isn't-
Yeah,
I
but
don't
no,
like
that's,
those two words together, just
that's
reduction
the
in
only place it
revenue.
would come from.
oh, there's no provincial grant?
Oh no, there are provincial grants as well, but that would be between the homeowner and the province, not,
Mm.
as far as I know. Peter, are there sort of general municipal grants from the province to fund rebate programs?
I think there's a variety of programs out there, but depending on the topic,
Yeah.
I'm not that familiar with them.
Okay, anyway, so it would be nice to know if that's feasible. It's late, maybe not, may have to be next year. But we certainly want to be seen to be progressive and active on our conservation mechanisms. I already asked you about the multi-billing. This was about the bridge. Some of the bridge stuff that you requested, Nick, is predicated on who owns the bridge. Because we do not want to be touching the bridge if it's Modi's. And we need to know. So I suggest we need to spend money to get some title expert to find out whose blinking bridge it is. Because I don't want to be spending a penny on it because then we're going to take some sort of squatters' rights or
Right, regardless of where that bridge ends up, there's about $4,500 worth of safety issues that need to be addressed, and we will have a fair amount of liability if we don't address those. $4,500 is a...
we all have liability. Why?
Because in the absence of anything else, if we know there's a structural risk that exists in the city, we need to, for this, the municipality, we need to,
Provincial bridge?
well, we need to act upon it.
If the bridge is owned by the property owner, then the village is,
It's not owned by the property owner for sure. What we do
but
know
no, but
is...
hear me out.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
There is a responsibility to keep things safe as possible. If we're aware that there is in fact a deficiency in the bridge, we have a responsibility to deal with it somehow if it affects the public domain in some respect.
But it may be to sue
And
Modi to make the repairs.
Well, but nonetheless, then it becomes, it sorts out who owns the bridge and who's gonna bear the cost and go from there. We can't just make a decision, there has to be factual information behind it, but from a legal point of view, we know about something, we have to close it, we have to stop it, we have to do something from a due diligence point of view, and then bring it to the attention of whoever it is needs to fix it. If we have to fix it and charge back to the owner, then so be it. But whatever it is, that's the responsibility around that one. If we
Anyway,
don't
it's
know,
just something I need us to be conscious of, because the ownership may change our approach entirely.
Oh, absolutely, and there's.
I know you know that,
There's
yeah.
nothing predicating, not moving forward with that, but, all I'm saying, and Jim said it far more eloquently than I did, we have identified a hazard.
Yeah.
And we need to act on that identification.
That 4,500 is in the
It's already
budget.
implicit.
It is in the budget, yeah. I just want to be very sure that we're not assuming any sense of responsibility for a bridge that turns out to be somebody else's by spending a penny on it. Okay, so that's that. The other one was the cost implications of fire service levels. Does the model that we're going to see from you for the fire department budget take into account that the discussions Peter and I have been having, that there's some indication that fire service level must be stipulated by municipalities by June 30th this year and executed on. That includes things, well, there's 3 levels.
At this point, there isn't, but we've been asking the fire chief for that for over a year, so we'll just keep pursuing it.
That's a decision that
Yeah.
this council has to make, not the fire chief.
No, but
We
in
have to
terms of what
decide-
those service levels are and the cost, it's the fire chief's responsibility
Okay, fair
to
enough, yeah.
let us know. Of course, it's ours to budget it, but we can't budget what we don't know.
Okay, well, so
continue
council, you
follow
need
up.
to understand this. You know, it may very well be that because of what may or may not be mandatory, there seems to be some debate about that, that we have to assume the playbook service level 1, 2, or 3 by June 30th. My only evidence for that is a newsletter that came from an insurance company through Ann Yansu. There may be fire department costs, maybe doing something. I made some notes on typos on the utilities bill. It's timely. I really would like to see those. For example, in North America we have 240 volt wiring, not 220 wiring, whatever 220. I think it was probably meant 220 volt wiring, but on the bill it says 220 wiring. Well, that's what they have in England. So let's get some of this stuff fixed. It's been like this for 10 years. Can we please fix it? And then the tax bill that's coming up is ununderstandable, as I'm sure we all know. I know there's some difficulty in the tool that produces it, but here are my suggestions that how I would like to see it.
Yeah, we are very limited in what we can do.
I know.
It's not just Maze. West Vancouver really struggled with it. It's with
It's-
Tempest as well.
You know,
Because it's,
I don't need to tell you that you don't know if you're looking at a subtotal, a total, a repeat, a double count. You have no idea. I ended up just paying the number on the bottom and hope it's right. But this is, again, a communication for people to understand what it is that they're paying. Okay, let's move on. Everybody good? Some of this stuff will be addressed mainly by Pam for next time. Let me...
Carl, on this stuff, in terms of efficiency, are you looking to see this come back to an email to you? Or you're not looking to see this coming back from the table, are you? Or how do you want it back? For Pam to respond?
I would like staff, Pam specifically, to say we're going to do it, we're not going to do it.
Email format?
Yeah, email, yeah.
Email format?
Yeah.
Maybe copy to council and that's it?
Yeah, some things can be actions, some things are not pertinent anymore, blah, blah, blah. Peter, what do we want to do about these other things? These were my agenda items that I said I was prepared to produce recommendations for them once I knew if they could be handled administratively or not. So really this was back in your court. Do we need to resolve each of these things, or can you just do them? So the acting mayor's schedule has been, that's been put on the schedule, but none of the others, as far as I can tell.
Well, I think in terms of Mamu and Learn to Burn, I think the floor is open. And what would you like to talk about with respect to that?
Sorry, which one is that?
The second item.
Oh, I'm not looking at the agenda. I'm looking at my recommendations. Where did you get the menu thing from?
From your email,
Another email, a different email?
January 12th, which is attached as page 23.
So you're on page 23 now?
Actually, that was.
I don't see anything
that's
about
not-
Memu on that
no,
one.
That's not in that one. Sorry, that was a different email. It was only an email with 1 or 2 items.
Okay, I'll
So,
work through these quickly.
Um,
I'm going to defer this one about Learn to Burn. We are expecting to get some results out of the mobile air monitoring unit test at the end of January. Then we will know something about where we stand. My suggestion is that we then determine whether to run a Learn to Burn campaign about specifically wood heat and to get a before and after number because we'll be able to quantify the result. My understanding is that our particulates are particularly high The location of Mammy where it is today is not a very smoke-prone site. Our friend down Isleview, well, your next door neighbour, in fact, I get twice daily emails from him. The air is blue from smoke. So, you know, there are pockets of bad. So we'll defer that one once we get some results. Culvert, we were talking about that in the public works thing. Availability of minutes on the website. Surely this can be done administratively. We don't need a council resolution to get minutes available on the website.
It'll take some looking into. that's
Sure it will.
all.
I understand that. Rome wasn't built in a day. No, the second one is, the other one is the same request. Consent agendas. This came before us before we realized that we had to change the council procedures bylaw. Is that correct,
Yeah,
Peter?
so there's, my approach, what I'd like to recommend is, I'd like to have a bit of time to go through and see what changes, in addition to moving towards consent agendas, there may be a few other things, so let's do them all at once, is my thought process, but haven't really had an opportunity to see what other things we might want to look at in terms of amending. So I have experience doing consent agendas at the SOND, and I think they're a good thing. There's different ways to do it, so I'd like to spend a bit of time putting something together in terms of proposal as to how we move forward. I would suggest that it's not up here on the priority list, but something that's on my radar.
Fine. Yeah, I mean, some of this stuff is a little sort of cart before horse, chicken and egg. I don't really know. I mean, it doesn't sort of it doesn't match my asks in my email of the 12th. So the Board of Variance thing I see appeared somewhere else, so we can leave that one. Resolution consent agendas. Mayor's report on standing committee membership changes. That's underway. Do I report that at the regular council meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we need a resolution to accomplish the ask? No, we've already heard from that Pam will answer that administratively. That's great. Point 6 of mine, zoning bylaw changes.
So I think that's that's a big ticket item, and that, in addition to some of the other big ticket items that have been discussed in here and there, are things that I think need to be part of council's strategic planning process. You need to determine which things are going to have priority to move forward on, because with all of the various things, there's different projects here and there, and subdivision things that are going to come forward, and all kinds of stuff. So it's really a case of, how much capacity do we have to do these things, and realize that we can't do them all. So we need to determine which things are priorities, and that's a process that we need to go through.
Some of these things become priority, but de facto by resident applications. So we are going to be seeing several subdivision requests we know of that currently cannot happen according to our zoning bylaw because there may or may not be a decimal point error. So some of this stuff, so my question was more, not a wholesale, well, I was asking, do we just fix the lot size error, if error it is, or do we do a wholesale review? Because right now, I think there's 6 subdivision requests coming that I'm aware of, and there may be more, that the answer will have to be no because they don't meet the 2-acre lot size requirement.
Well, the answer to that is that those requests can still come forward. You would simply look at them as one-off rezoning requests. So each one of them would be a zoning amendment with respect to that particular application without revisiting the whole thing. Or if we have time to do it, then it's better to look at, let's amend the zoning bylaw, but you don't want to do that without taking the time to realize, are there any unintended consequences in doing so? So I think, yes, you need to take the time to look at it, and if we have to deal with individual applications that come forward in the interim, then you can deal with them on a one-by-one basis. But in a best scenario world, yeah, you're amending the whole thing. But
I agree, although I think it would be very imprudent councillor that would vote to give a zoning amendment on a case-by-case basis to go to a half-acre lot or a quarter-acre lot when the current zoning bylaw says a 2-acre lot. That is so clearly against the intent of what is in the current zoning bylaw, you'd be crazy to do it. So unless the zoning bylaw is in error, in which case it should be fixed I know that because it's zoning bylaw, it has to go through public hearing and so on and so forth. But if it's just an administrative fix,
Each one of those applications would have to have a public hearing for a rezoning.
precisely.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's something that other jurisdictions do all the time, because oftentimes a one-size-fits-all zoning bylaw doesn't work. There's gonna be people that are affected in different ways, so they're gonna bring forward applications where they're saying, this zoning bylaw doesn't work for me, look at my parcel, look at what I'm asking to do.
Yeah, but-
And you need to look at them on an individual basis and say, this makes sense or it doesn't make sense.
so, but recognize, if our zoning bylaw was what it was supposed to be, which we don't know what it was supposed to be, the subdivision request would be administrative, it wouldn't even come to council. It's paperwork.
It
So
would be simpler. Yes.
it would be a totally different animal. You know, it's not a case of a simple rezoning request versus a complicated rezoning. It's the tool needs to be fixed or not. If in fact the council of the day intended that the minimum lot size is 2 acres, well then we need to know that, and then we need to. That's a whole different discussion. Do we want to change it? So I guess where I'm going with this is, do we want to fix an error so that the subdivision requests are easier and become administrative? Just for council's edification, as you probably know, subdivision requests are handled as a staff function. It doesn't even come to council. It's not even a vote. It either meets the requirements or it doesn't. Okay, so we'll be looking for your recommendation on that, because you know, the issue is timely. We have several people who will be highly disappointed and thwarted in their plans if our paperwork hasn't caught up.
Is the bylaw committee reviewing the zoning bylaw?
Not at the moment. No. Resolution. Oh, I've asked for a schedule. Do we need a resolution to do this, or can staff just start doing it?
Sorry,
Produce a schedule of yeah, I mean, not all of my asks made it onto the agenda, so I'm asking other things.
So, as I've alluded to in some of our discussions to date, I'd like to come up with a model that captures resolutions from meetings and what what work flows out of it.
Sort of a tool.
Yeah, I mean, staff already has something that approximates that in terms of action items, but it contains more than just resolutions. I'm used to dealing with something called a follow-up action list that flows out of the resolutions that were passed in meetings, and then those things are divvied up according to departments and people responsible and so forth. And so I'd like to work on what that looks like in terms of our future communications on what flows out of meetings.
Fantastic. Okay, that sounds good, thanks. And I'll waive discussion on correspondence and communication policy. That'll come to us another time. So we'll move on to C now.
Wait, see?
You
Before we
missed,
finish yours, with your 6, the culvert repairs, because that's gonna be a big chunk of our budget. I have no idea what, except for the fact that I've received some resident email about it. Could we get a little report, a brief on culvert
It's in the
repairs?
capital plan. That's what we were talking about.
I know, I saw it, but it was just, so all I have is a line, right? I don't know exactly what needs to be repaired and why and all that stuff. But you may know, but I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. All I know is what it's going to cost. It's going to cost $175,000 apparently. I don't know what we get for that and how that's part, but that's going to have to come as the business case, which we're obviously going to need for something that big.
So are we gonna,
But.
And how it ties into the IMP and all
so
that
are we
stuff.
gonna get that?
But I can't actually give you specifics because part of that is getting the design. So I have to get the design and the engineering in order to be able to actually articulate to you what the project's gonna look like. So what I do know is that it's not simply pulling a piece of culvert out and replacing it, because it has to go back a fair amount, 200 meters or something like that. Then we have road replacement on top of that. We have to vet it, there's a number of things we have to do. The design will dictate the information, for lack of a better way of putting it. So,
I know I will say no, my vote would be no, unless I understood how this fit into a more holistic, finally a master plan.
yes, absolutely.
And I know you know what I'm talking about. So where's the water going to go? Is that part of the master plan? Are we going to get which of our 4 drainage options are we going to get? A ditch, a culvert, a gutter, whatever. Is the road going to be recambered? Because right now the road is actually pointing the wrong way. So all that stuff. And I know you're going to, and it may be that it's going to cost more. It may be a two-phase thing. Study first, spend next year. We don't know. Although I don't think any of us want to be receiving emails for the next year on the hole in that specific portion of Ocean View.
Okay, not a call display.
Just wait till it comes to you.
Yeah. There's more than one way to get in touch with people than phone, I can tell you. Okay, let's move on. Council,
Motion to receive?
do we need a motion to receive? I guess it's a mayor's report,
Preferably.
yeah. Motion to receive the mayor's disjointed diatribe. And a second, all in favour? Vote carried, thank you.
And sorry, just while we're at it, I failed to point out that we should have a motion on the previous item prior to the commencement of your report, and that would be simply that staff be directed to incorporate the edited supplementary budget requests into the draft 2016 budget, as she's about to do. Okay.
Yes, certainly. This is new to us because we never voted on recommendations coming out of the
So-
council strategy, but that's fine. I'm happy to do it.
Just from a procedural standpoint, everything you do is done by motion, second, carry.
Even in committee.
Even in committees, as a committee, you're recommending what council should or shouldn't do. So when you're here, when you're in council, the way in which you conduct business is by resolution.
Yeah.
So if you want something to take place, then it should be a resolution. Now, there will be some sort of minor things that we talk about that, staff will follow up on something or
Action
look into
items,
something.
yeah.
But for the most part, substantive matters should be addressed by way of resolution.
Okay,
So
so
we should get in the habit of just, after a while, it's just gonna be motion second carried, and we'll be on to the next item, and it'll be second nature for you, but.
so the recommendation has been read. I'll move that recommendation. Can I have a second? And all in favour? Opposed? Carried. So that carries. Thanks, Peter. You can jigger it in the minutes to make it the right order.
Yep.
Now, C, Council. 1,
C.
Waterson. A, increasing relative service report, page 25.
Okay, the reason I wrote this report was, I'm confident that Nikki is looking after our public works and our infrastructure, and that Pam is looking after our finance. But it doesn't seem like, well, to date, or recently, we've had anyone to look after general staffing issues and resident service. Someone's, tracking that and making sure that we are meeting the residents' needs from that perspective. And so these were some discussion points that I put out. For example, I understand that we're in the midst of union contract discussions. And I don't even know if this is a council thing or not. And I was just actually wondering if you can give us some guidance on.
Yeah, so what I will say is, there's maybe a couple things that, should be discussed in closed, but I can tell you that, we haven't really commenced union bargaining yet.
Mm-hmm.
We're sort of at the tail end of that process, and they start with the larger municipalities, and they'll get to us eventually. So I've just sort of, at this point, only made, telephone and email contact with people at Metro and getting to understand who's on the bargaining unit side of things, and so yeah,
And council's
that's
bargaining position. Would you ask us, or it's
I,
completely up to you?
as we go forward, no, it won't be completely up to me. There'll be general updates in the future, and we'll discuss things in closed in terms of
Mhm.
where things are at. But so yeah, you will be kept up to date. The second one we should just discuss in closed. The third one really relates to monitoring staff efficiency and level of service. That's monitoring of things, of performance and things like that, and levels of service should relate to, ideally, prioritized strategic plan. And then you've got implementation plans that flow out of that, and from that, staff will make work plans. So we have to build that foundation, in my opinion. We're not there yet. I think that's sort of one of the things we need to work towards, and something that I'll speak further to. And then with respect to number 4, that's, you've outlined a lot of things about potential communication strategy issues, and I think that's where that discussion belongs for the most part. So yeah, but definitely, some
So you're gonna be on top of
obviously
it.
some reasonable things you're asking, and things that we need to talk about. And yes, I'll be the guy going forward. So hopefully you'll get some satisfaction out of me in that respect.
Okay.
And then you had,
So the next report, actually, a lot of it was just pulled out of previous ask, and I think it's already been addressed earlier, so I don't really have to go through this.
I mean, I did respond to
Yeah.
Councillor Watterson on each of these questions. There's 14, 15 questions,
Yeah.
which I'd be happy to share with people. And these are all, yes, we need all of this. Some of it's more timely than other. What's our debt policy, for example? Well, we need to decide that. And I suppose at some point staff is going to make a recommendation so that council can establish the Village of Lions Bay's debt policy. Do we want debt? Do we not want debt? Are we prepared to max out the debt? Do we want to increase our tax base so that we can increase our debt, etc., etc.?
just bit B, D, and E, I think, are closed items.
Yeah. Capital investment plan is not really, that's not a really municipal question. There's a for-profit business would have one of those. So I have I just sent it to you. I think
Yeah.
I didn't send it to everybody else. So what would you like to have happen to this?
Actually, nothing. Just,
Well, I don't want to lose the information, and I don't want to lose the ask either. But
because I think it's, actually, if you turn over to page 28, what I would like is to be able to have numbers against these items. And ideally, it would be good if I was able to get the actual numbers from 2014, 2015, and then our budget for 2016 presented in this kind of format, so that when I look at operating budget, I know, okay, what we're spending on salaries and wages as a lump sum, as opposed to going through the various funds and then try to figure out, well, how much are we spending?
Rather than, this is for your, on this, last time I saw you, I said I was gonna steal this for my portion of the annual report. So I was intending to do this for the budget 2016, and I could probably work the 2015 actuals in, because we'll have the budget numbers for them. Would you accept the 2015 and budget 16 if I plugged the numbers and worked it into my commentary on the annual report?
I'll take it.
I'd leave out the fuel number. I don't think
No,
we
so
really need
I'm-
to drill
yeah,
down
I don't-
that
yeah,
level of detail.
that's what I was
I'll move
thinking.
the categories to the relevant ones, but,
New fire halls and
Anyway.
equipment.
all right, let's take the spirit, not the content.
Yeah. No, I mean this is a statement of financial position
Yeah.
merged with profit and loss statement, or whatever we call it. What do we call it now?
So if you.
That would be great.
I will do that.
So yeah, I would see this as a communication piece that goes hand in hand with a traditionally formulated budget. So Pam would do her
Yeah.
thing, and then this would be something that helps explain to the public, which is, I think, what you're
Yeah,
after.
it's the marketing piece
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
But even for myself, when I'm making budget decision, I would like to I guess have the number presented in this way as well, because it's easier for me to understand.
Just because you appended on your report, can I ask? We haven't seen a balance sheet, a statement of financial position since the 2014 statement.
Right.
So we have had a year and a bit's operations go past us without any update on its effect on the balance sheet, correct? When do we expect to see a balance
We
sheet?
generally just do a balance sheet annually, so we'll do it again. We're working on it now as part of the financial statement.
Is that
It's presented-
prudent? Is that prudent
Yeah,
fiscal
generally.
management?
I mean, we'll do the cash flow. I mean, there's different items you can do individually, but the balance sheet itself is generally just an annual. It's your P&L and how you're doing against budget that a municipality wants to track, which we do quarterly.
Yeah,
And
once you're doing it
then,
against
yeah.
budget,
Yeah.
you, in theory.
Which we started doing third quarter, and we'll do every quarter now.
Okay.
And then it'll be cash flow analysis, but in terms of your balance sheet, it's really, I mean, the bulk of it is your assets, and we update that every year.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the balance sheet because I actually have no idea, Ron and I were talking about this afternoon, what the state of our reserves is right now.
Well, again, that's something, and I've
I-
been able to
it's
split
coming.
that, I'll do that next, that's something we'll do regularly as well, but the balance sheet itself is generally just done annually.
Okay, I'm very conscious of the time here, guys, so let's move on. C, you added an item, KPI materials, Helen?
No,
well-
actually, we already
Oh, we
have
brought
it
that
out.
forward,
Yeah.
okay.
Dealt that.
That
So
was
we'll
that.
move on. So can I have a motion to receive Councillor Waterson's set of reports? And a second, further discussion? All in favour? Opposed, that carries. Committees, there being none, we'll move on to new business. Financial calendar, Ron?
Thank you. And to be brief, I would ask that, I seek Peter's guidance on this. And can I just be an ask that's an item carried forward for the next strategy session or resolution tonight? But Pamela had presented us a financial calendar format, anticipated financial calendar format a month and a half ago. She's done other things and there's some stuff pending. If I could get that freshened so that we've got a brand new financial calendar for next council meeting, that would be appreciated.
Good, thanks, let's leave it there.
Is that something that do you have
Yeah.
any questions or?
Just change the dates?
Just to
Yeah,
change
just
the
change the
dates.
dates.
Yeah.
Same,
Yep.
okay.
Unless there are any add subtracts in the line items themselves.
Well, for instance, you've added the Brunswick stuff last time that wasn't at that particular time, it was gonna be done later, but, so there's been some,
Yep.
some things have fallen off, some things have gone on, so let's get it out there again, thank you.
Good, okay, how do we handle that? That's just new business, there's no resolution to receive, right?
Well,
Okay,
that the CFO bring forward financial calendar for
Thank you.
next meeting.
that's an action item?
That would be a motion that you might wanna make, although she's pledged
She
to
said
do
she's
so.
gonna do it. It's an
so
action
Let's leave it
We
as an
don't need,
action
we don't
item.
need it.
Action item for the tape.
Yeah.
Public questions and comments, there being none, we'll move on to resolution to close the meeting. Can I have a motion to close under section 91C, please? Thanks, and a second, discussion in favour, opposed, carried. Okay.